Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
Welcome to Fathers of the Grind Game of the Year episode. This is it. This is the final one. This is the granddaddy of them all. We are going to talk about our favorite overall game from 2018. And who better to join us for that conversation than Kyle Neely and Dan Phillips. Hey, boys.
Hello.
Hey.
Now, these guys are both bearded up like me, which I appreciate. I actually appreciate that most of the guests we've had it on are sporting some kind of beard. Now, Derek, who's also here on the line with us before he speaks, yes. I will say what I know he's thinking, and that is only ugly people need to have beards. If you're good looking enough, you don't need a beard on your face. Is that fair? Is that accurate representation of your opinion?
100% accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, but honestly, one of these days, you're going to need to grow out the beard a little bit. We need to see what happens when you let it go.
I mean, I grew it out pretty long for a little bit, but I just don't like it. I think it's just stupid. I think I'm too good looking to cover up any part of my face.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I like to think, though, that for your midlife crisis, which is what, 7-8 years away.
No, I'm definitely going through it right now.
Okay. So sometime before your midlife crisis is over, let's make sure that you get a man bun and beard going on at some point.
Good look. I love that idea. Yeah. I even did research on midlife crisis, and I was like, oh my God, that's me. Okay. The struggle is real.
All right, so we're going to kick things off this episode. Before we get to the big one, we'll talk first about a couple other categories, starting with just plain fun. We'll keep it light, keep it simple. Hopefully we'll keep the insults to a minimum as we talk about a game or two that we found that, regardless of what the critics said or whether or not we ended up loving it more than everything else, but we have to admit this game is just flat out fun to play. We'll start with Kyle, who's a newcomer to our episodes for this year. Kyle was part of our episodes last year, if you'll remember, for Game of the Year. So Kyle, welcome back. Why don't you give us a couple games that you would say this year just plain fun?
Just plain fun. I actually just got my just plain fun game this year. It's Earth Defense Force 5. It's my ultimate palate cleanser game. It's kind of really nice to play something so mindless and stupid, and it's just a giant B movie kind of playing in game form. But it's nice to play after playing a whole bunch of like open world and giant games this year, which is just I felt like there were so many of them. So yeah, I'm just blasting aliens right now and giant ants and giant spiders. It's very Starship Troopery, which I think that's the first DLC as well, is like Starship Trooper DLC. So very interested in this game. It's very lengthy. So I think it's like 100 stages. Each stages take about 20 minutes to get through. And some stages become like really hard, so you have to go back and kind of grind a little bit. So by playing old stages, it's very Dynasty Warriors-y with like sci-fi guns and stuff. By the end of the game, you're shooting nukes at buildings, and like the entire, everything is 100% destructibility, and so you can see it. You can like just lay waste entire cities and stuff like that with your weaponry by the end of the game.
That alone is a selling point. You can shoot nukes at buildings. That sounds fantastic.
Very, very, very fun. You got to work to get there, but it's a lot of fun.
So is it one of those pixel art type games, or is it pretty sharp?
No, arcade? It's not sharp looking. I'll tell you, it looks like a PS2 game, but maybe PS3, like bad PS3 game. But its frame rate is finally, for the first time, pretty stable. It's 4 players online. It's 2-player couch co-op. It's a lot of fun. It's a great game. And if you're unsure about the series, 4.1 is very, very cheap these days. And that's a very good entry in the series. And that's on PS4 and as well. So
okay. All right. Hey, Derek, what about you? I know I usually make you wait till last, but I'm going to jump to you next. What is a game this year, especially this fall, as you've gotten back into games, that you would say just plain fun? Whether or not you're going to rank it super high on your overall list.
I'm gonna name off 2. I won't talk about them too much. I'll just say they're fun. My top 2 would be Far Cry 5 and Forza Horizon 4.
Nice.
I mean, I've said it in past shows, so the only thing I'll say is they were just fun to play. Like, I played a lot of co-op with Far Cry 5, but even when I wasn't playing co-op and just playing it by myself, it was fun. And then Forza Horizon 4 was just a game that I would put Spotify on, and then I would just play. I just would get lost in the world. So
it's a very meditative game.
Horizon is. Yeah.
Yeah, like those two games, like I mean Far Cry 5, when you get into story missions and stuff like that could be, you got to think a little bit, but for the most part those two games for the year I needed games where you just don't think, you just go blow stuff up or drive around or whatever, and those fit it.
Yeah. Cool. Dan, what about you?
When I think of the most fun I had with something this year, it would probably have to be Diablo 3. Coming back to Switch, it's an old game. It's something I played a long time before, but definitely it's with the new console, it just offers so much fun and great time to do it. And I just love going back through that game, and I guess the freedom it offers you to going back through it, playing it on the Switch it's been great.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. What about stuff from 2018?
Other stuff, 2018, Spider-Man would probably be one of my most fun things to game. But, for me, mainly it was the traversal. The combat was a lot of fun, but just going around that world, traversing it, that was just plain fun for me. Just had a big old shit-eating grin on my face the whole time I was playing it. It was just great. It was fun. I just wish there was a little more interesting things to do within the city. But as far as getting around and going beating up bad guys, it was some of the most fun I've had.
Speaking of Spider-Man, just saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse today with my kids. We all loved it. And
it looks great.
It's really, really good. And it kind of makes me wonder, could the Spider-Man games go that direction with the multi-dimensions and multiverse, versions of Spider-Man? Anyway, that was really cool. It was interesting. And of course, as a gamer, I'm sitting there going, ooh, I could see us having a lot of fun with that character if we could control them, or this one over here. So anyway, that could be cool. I know they've done something like that before with the dimensions,
Yeah,
but
dimension.
what if they had the Insomniac style of gameplay with anyway? All right. I digress. I agree with Spider-Man. That's a great pick. That's one that I considered too for this, but I think when it comes down to it, I want to make sure that I call out one that is not in my top 10 this year, my personal top 10, and that is Starlink Battle for Atlas. Is not in my top 10, but it is a game that I had a blast with and continue to have fun with as I play it. So Starlink is a really fun Star Fox-esque adventure game, exploration game. It's kind of a third-person shooter when you're down on the ground, and it's a full-on multi-directional dogfighting space battle game when you're out in space. So I thought it was a blast. I really enjoy it. In my opinion, just plain fun. Not super complex, but a lot of fun to play. So I would say Starlink. There's a few others too, like Spider-Man and Assassin's Creed Odyssey come to mind, but spoiler alert, I'll be talking about those here in a little while. So I wanted to give Starlink a little love since it will not be in my personal top 10, but it was fun. So there we go. All right. Well, that gets us out of nicey. Hey, good pick. Good opinion there. That was fine. Now we're going to jump into our first list we have to rank, and that is best visuals. I am purposefully not defining what visual has to mean to you. For you, it might mean the crisp 4K, everything looks perfect and realistic. It might mean this incredible stylized world that, again, looks really great, looks best in 4K. And it might mean the best version of a retro style game. It just really depends on your personal preference. You'll have to make that case, and we'll hopefully come to some sort of agreement to a top 5. So what we'll do is we'll take turns nominating games one at a time to consider. I'll share my screen here so you can see the list as we populate it, and then we will decide which ones get to move over for consideration in our final top 5 here. So let's start with Dan, since we made him wait to go last. Dan, give us the first one that you would say needs to be considered for best visuals.
I think it's probably a no-brainer, but just say Red Dead Redemption 2. Definitely one of the prettiest open worlds I've ever played in, and everything on that game is top tier visually. The environments, the settings. The only thing I'd say that probably hits against it is a little bit with the lighting. They didn't have true HDR in the game, but for the most part, everything with that game was visually stunning.
Yeah. Okay. Red Dead. Derek, what about you?
I'm going to go with Forza Horizon 4.
Okay.
I think
for obvious reasons. I mean, it's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Do I need to elaborate? I mean,
yeah, not at the moment. You can hold off on that for now. I'll add it in there. Yeah, Forza's gorgeous. Kyle?
I'd like to go with it's either Grist or Grease. I don't know how they pronounce it. It's that game that just came out recently, hand drawn. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I've never seen anything quite like this game before, especially in motion. It's very smooth. We got to throw that one in there.
Okay, no, I agree with that. All right, I'm gonna put Assassin's Creed Odyssey in here,
Okay.
and then so it goes back then to Dan.
I'd throw in there God of War.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Don't
Derek?
need to say anything.
Yeah.
Detroit.
Sure.
Yep.
Detroit Become Human. Okay. Kyle?
Super Smash Brothers.
Gonna be that guy, huh?
Yeah, just so many different art styles somehow coexisting in one game. It's insane.
That's hard to argue. It's hard to argue. All right. I am going to go out on a limb and add Dead Cells in here.
It's a good one. Absolutely.
Yep.
Trash.
I love the visuals on that game.
Yeah.
Dan?
Let the clouds come out.
I think I'd have to throw Shadow of the Tomb Raider in there.
I know which game I'm kicking out first. Derek?
Dragon Quest 11.
That's a good one.
Okay. Kyle?
Dragon Ball Fighter Z. It's like playing an anime.
You know, I played the demo or beta, whatever that was, for the Switch, just to see. I was curious, how will this game play on this little system? First of all, it plays really great, and that game does look impressive.
Very impressive game, yeah.
Have to admit that. All right, I'm going to put Far Cry 5 on here. There's one that I don't expect necessarily to make the list, but I want to at least acknowledge that it was a good-looking game.
It was.
Dan, what else you got?
Yeah, just throw it out there. Probably won't survive, but Sea of Thieves.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Oh,
It's,
that water, though. That water.
So
great
good, yeah.
water, but it, the rest of the art style, the characters and everything, it was a fun.
It goes
art.
back to what I was saying. It's a very clean and crisp art style. And,
Yep.
I mean, it's really, really detailed. I like it a lot. Derek?
Soul Calibur 6.
Nice.
What part of the graphics do you like the most, Derek?
The part where they're in the game.
Okay, cool. Kyle?
I'll go Monster Hunter World. The creature design alone just is amazing.
Not 4K. Get the 4 out.
I agree.
Derek, I was setting you up with Soul Calibur. Isn't that the game that's got still remains to have all the scantily clad women?
Oh, yeah. I was just watching a YouTube video to
you were.
get me turned on.
Sure you were. Okay, cool.
My girl 2B's in it, so I'm going to upskirt
Oh,
that.
from Nier.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to upskirt that all night.
Most of us think of Nier and we think of this really incredible boundary pushing sci-fi story that was really well told. And Derek just thinks of all the screenshots that he took.
Yeah.
A lot of maturity here. Dan.
And
if you run out of them, just say, I think that's it. If you're done, that's fine.
I don't know. I kind of want to throw it out there just because I thought it was visually interesting, but Octopath Traveler.
Yes.
It wasn't the greatest art style, but I mean, just the throwbacks to the 16-bit era and then what it did with the 3D.
The environment
and the lighting.
alone deserved to be.
I think it's better looking than Dead Cells.
And,
I do too.
For what it is and on the Switch hardware, I think it's a great art style. But
yeah, I agree with that.
I'm going to throw one more in there. I expect it to be deleted right away, but I think Spider-Man still looked good, but
good.
No, it did.
Yeah.
Kyle, you got any more?
If I had to throw out one more, I would just go the new Pokemon.
Pokemon, let's go.
I would have said Ashen if it wasn't for all the screen tearing.
Yeah, I do get a lot of that too. Still pretty impressive, but it has too many struggles.
Yeah.
Let me just glance through to make sure I'm not leaving out anything. Nope, that came out last year. Yeah, this is one of those years that I finally caught up on Last of Us and Left Behind. So, but I'm just trying to filter out games from last year, and I'm not counting Shadow of the Colossus, although I do think that was a really pretty game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I've got at this point. Stuff like Starlink has a cool art style, but not really. It wouldn't really last, so I won't put that one in there. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. So you guys can see my screen still, right? You can see that.
Yep.
That list right now. We've got 18 games.
It looks good.
So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about which games certainly need to get moved over, and then we'll have to essentially whatever does not get moved over to this section right here, we're eliminating it. So
Okay.
I'll go first. I think we of course have to move Red Dead over to the list to at least consider ranking it.
Yes.
Sure. Absolutely.
Derek, what would you move over there?
I think Forza Horizon 4 has to be a lot.
Yeah. Kyle, what about you?
I'm still gonna go with Greece.
Dan?
Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Okay.
I didn't pick it, but God of War needs to go over there.
For sure.
Yeah. And I liked the Dragon Quest 11 one. I've played that game only for about 2 hours. I finally tried it out.
It does
And
look real nice.
It
Very
is
charming
really pretty.
Very charming.
And I don't even have a PS4 Pro, and it looks amazing. What else needs to move over here? Do we think Detroit needs to come over?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm okay with skipping Smash and Dead Cells for the moment.
Okay.
You guys speak up if you really don't agree with that. I want to talk about Shadow of the Tomb Raider, though, real quick. Because I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider had some moments that were really pretty. But I don't know that it compares to the ones we've already moved over.
See, here's my thing. I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Spider-Man have a lot in common, meaning the parts where it looks really good, like Lara and Spider-Man, it looks really good.
Yes.
But other characters and other even parts like of the worlds were bland at times and not well done.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
And I agree with what you're saying, but I think one thing that Shadow of the Tomb Raider did have was just those big set pieces. And,
For
you know, in some of those big areas, the lighting, the jungles, everything looked really nice in those big set pieces and how that all came together. And I think visually it was pretty striking in those instances, though there was plenty in the game that wasn't.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's
had
moments
yeah.
where
I'm just saying those
definitely-
moments were pretty top tier. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
there were some good moments.
I mean, without giving anything away, the visuals for Spider-Man on that final battle were pretty epic.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, both games to me, I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider is better looking overall. I'm not going to say they're equals. I'm just saying I think they're both the same, meaning there's moments where I'm like, holy crap, this looks amazing. And then there's way too many moments where I'm like, this looks bland or this character looks terrible while this one standing right next to it looks amazing. So
That's fair.
Yeah.
How about Far Cry 5?
I liked it, but I gotta say, especially playing co-op and seeing the other character running around with me, they don't do a very good job with character design, but the world looked really good.
Yeah,
But-
not unless it's part of an important cinematic moment in the game. Then I think the characters look good. But in general, it's a great looking game. I can't say that I'd put it in there if I'm going to leave out Shadow, and we already kind of touched on Spider-Man. I don't necessarily think those make the cut for the top 5. I think Far Cry is in that group where they're all 3 good looking games, maybe not at the upper echelon though.
Okay. Like Kyle said though, Monster Hunter World, the monster design in that, I mean,
So good.
that was, you know, I wasn't totally happy with the visuals on that game, but
No.
like Derek said, no 4K, but otherwise it was pretty good looking. Those monsters did look great.
Yeah, the monster design certainly deserves recognition. The environments bring it down a bit. I do love. I love the armor and the weapons. They all look great.
I just don't think it's top 5.
If we were doing like design or something like
No, I think it'd be, you know, top 10 maybe.
Top 10, but not top 5.
Yeah, it's hard to sneak that into a top 5. I agree.
See, I would put Soul Calibur over 6. I would definitely consider it. I know a lot of y'all didn't play it, but if you go and look at the game, there's not many fighters that are better looking in that game. And it's just every character, every level, everything is it's really detailed. It looks good.
I think
And I'm not even playing it in native 4K because I settled for the 1X version. But it
settled
looks
for 1X. Listen to you.
Settled
for 1X.
I love when you catch my
Oh my gosh,
snotty
you're so pretentious.
my snotty PC master race lingo. But yeah, I think Soul Calibur 6.
I want to hear someone else vouch for it before we move it over. Kyle or
No.
Dan.
Mm.
Well, get your Gris ass out of here.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm on board with Gris though, man.
All right, so if we're getting down to top 5, I think what we have over there is good.
I would argue for Dragon Quest XI. That was a big omission in my brain on my part. So I think with Derek bringing that up, I was just like, yeah.
I moved that one over because I'm with you guys.
Oh, I didn't see that there. Yeah, absolutely.
The only one I was going to ask you guys about is mentioning Octopath Traveler enough? Like it would have made top 10, but just it's tough to put. Even though it's beautiful pixel art and amazing environments, would you guys put it in the top 5?
I think to me, you got to either pick that or Gris.
That's fair. Like to me, it was between that and Dead Cells, and that beats Dead Cells to me. Which, by the way, I love the way Dead Cells looks. The thing about Dead Cells I want to say before we stop talking about it for visuals is I love the animation. It's not so much the way everything looks in still form, which does look nice. It's all about the animation of the monsters and of the battling and all that. It's just, I think it's gorgeous. And I think the same thing, not the same thing, the opposite for Octopath. It's not so much the animations, which look good. It looks like a really sharp 16 or 32-bit JRPG with the classic, pixel art style characters. But what I loved about it was the environments as you're walking through almost like this pop-up picture book style environment. It was all very shiny and cool looking. And even the water in that one harbor city and stuff, I was like, this is a weird and intriguing combination of visuals. So we can at least show it a little love, but maybe not put it in the final 5.
Yeah.
I don't know what you thought, Kyle.
No, I completely agree with everything you just said.
Okay.
I think it's a pretty game. It may not make the top 5, but shedding a little light on it's not a bad idea.
All right.
We got some stiff competition in terms of visuals and graphics this year.
It does. I'm just going to move it over for a quick second, kind of talk myself into it for a moment. Other games that I think are fair nominations. I think Pokemon Let's Go is the best looking Pokemon game to date.
That doesn't take much, though.
Yeah, not really.
It doesn't.
It's an interesting jump from what it was to what it is now.
But it looks really nice, and so I'm looking forward to see what they do with the full-on Pokemon game next time around too.
Yep.
Any others that were nominated that we didn't talk about yet? Does everyone agree that Spider-Man is kind of in that same camp as a Far Cry 5 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or was I overstepping a bit?
So. No,
I agree with that.
All right. Okay, so we've got Red Dead, Forza, Gris, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which only 2 of us said something about. You guys are all 3 of you guys on board with Assassin's Creed Odyssey being considered here? Any issues with that?
I don't know. I'll say one thing about it is that the character models probably don't hold up to some of these other games, especially. Again, it's one of these where the set pieces are good. The environments look really nice. It has very nice lighting. But as a whole, it might have some shortcomings compared to some of these other games that are maybe more of a complete visual package.
Also has good water. Oh, we didn't talk about Sea of Thieves. Is that worthy to bring over, or were you guys already kind of saying, nah, we don't need to bring it over here?
No.
Probably wouldn't make top 5, but it was definitely worth bringing up just because of those water alone.
Yeah, the water, everything looked good. It was fun, but I just didn't know that this is going to be a top 5, not with this competition.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we've got Red Dead, Forza, Greece, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, God of War, Dragon Quest XI, Detroit, and Octopath, which I already know is going to stay at the bottom of this list of 8 that we have. So right now, I think the ones that are kind of fighting to stay in there that are not automatics would be Greece, and maybe it's between these bottom 3, Dragon Quest, Detroit, and Octopath. Maybe it's those 4 that are fighting to get in.
Octopath is out.
I think you're right.
For me.
No.
Like I'm just here. Let me rearrange this a bit. I feel like there's 4 that I'm going to assume, based on what we all just said, are certainly in the top 5. It's just a matter of where. And then we have a spot for one more out of these 4.
Yep, I think that's fair.
And I'll just start it off by saying I think between Greece, Dragon Quest XI, Detroit Become Human, and Octopath Traveler, I think Detroit deserves the spot. And I'll kind of go off of what Dan was saying. I think Detroit Become Human has some of the best character models and just visuals when it comes to faces and expressions and conversation, which is fantastic because when you play a story-based game, it's very dialogue and character-driven. A game like Telltale, for example, it's hard not to laugh out loud at some of the jankiness of people talking and things like that. Detroit was nearly flawless when it comes to character models and stuff like that. And I thought it was a beautiful game overall. So I'd put it in that 5. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I really like Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah,
and
and
the thing is Dragon Quest XI is not one that you can compare to any of these games and be like, well, it does this visually better. It's completely different. It's it's basically a cartoon, and none of those games listed above the top 4 are cartoons. Do I think Detroit Become Human should be in? Yes. That's why I'm struggling with leaving Dragon Quest XI out. I think both of those need to be in, which makes me wonder if Assassin's Creed Odyssey is really worthy. I think it's a good looking game. Don't get me wrong. I thought Origins was a great looking game too. But since, I was kind of making the comments about, Spider-Man and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Assassin's Creed has the same issue. Now, before I state this, I am always going to say, when you're a big open world game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I always will give you a little bit of, slack on
You've
not
got
being
so much to display.
Yes. But at the same time, the characters, all that stuff doesn't look any different than Origins to me, and they fall a little short. Just like, Far Cry 5 fell a little short, and Spider-Man. So when you get in these open world games, they kind of start to lose detail on secondary things in the world.
Yeah, especially when you got to some NPCs with little random side missions. Some of them were a little disappointing. I think that's a valid knock on Assassin's Creed Odyssey that puts its place in a top 5 in question. I will say, in its defense, it might have some of the best long draw distance views as you get up onto onto one of those perches
That's
and
what
look
I'm
out.
saying. The highs of Assassin's Creed Odyssey are very high.
Yes.
Yep.
The lows, and again, only because of this list, I'm comparing it only to the list that's already been moved over, are probably the lowest of all the games that we're considering.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think what Derek's saying, I mean, I echo that exactly. As a whole visual package, I think Detroit probably, I haven't played it yet, just what I've seen, but it seems like it's a well more balanced, what you see is what you get, where Assassin's Creed, does have more of the highs and lows. So I think it would probably make more sense to put Assassin's Creed lower down and move Detroit up and possibly even sneak in Dragon Quest XI and leave Assassin's Creed off. I'd be open to that.
What do you think, Kyle? Did you play Detroit?
Yeah, I love Detroit, and I kind of think Detroit is in that same bracket as like Forza Horizon, where it's like, no duh, Forza Horizon looks good this year, and it's like, no duh, that this Detroit looks good. I mean, it's a very performance-based visual game because there's not a lot of mechanics that are involved in reading in that game. So I mean, they can put a lot of power into visuals, and they do, and that game really showcases really well.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed, I think the game is really pretty for being such a huge game. But yeah, I mean, it does everything that Derek was saying. I absolutely agree with. It does have the lowest of the lows when it's low on this list. But
I will say this though, before we completely move Assassin's Creed off, which by the way, finishing 6th or 7th on this list is no big deal. There are some gorgeous games this year, but Assassin's Creed Odyssey has some. It's kind of later in the game when you're pursuing these 4 artifacts for one of the main story missions, and you go into these dungeon-like areas to fight these mega bosses, and some of that is really surprisingly good looking.
Yeah.
I thought some of that was great, but you're right. It does not, since it is a very character-driven and story-driven game. There are times when it's hard not to giggle a little bit at some of the facial animations or the way the eyes are kind of not really focusing or whatever it is. It's not quite there. So I'm okay with this not including this one for best visuals and putting Detroit in that list for sure.
And my vote would be Dragon Quest XI.
I would push for Greece, but that doesn't sound like anybody else is too hot on that.
I'd go Dragon Quest.
That's a tough one for me. I played about an hour of Greece so far, and I like it. I think it's really pretty, and I've played about 2 hours of Dragon Quest XI. I also like it and think it's really pretty. So that's a tough one for me to make a call on because, like Derek said earlier, the art styles are so different. I think Dragon Quest XI does probably the best anime style video game visuals I've ever seen. Probably can't think of any others that are better.
Yeah, I put it
Looks-
up there with like Ni no Kuni from PS3. Like the way I felt playing Ni no Kuni is how I feel playing Dragon Quest XI, and that's probably why I have like this special feeling about the game, even though I haven't beat it or anything. Is it probably gives me nostalgia from the time that I played Ni no Kuni and got like sucked into that game.
Well, I do want to bring up something that Kyle was pointing out, and Dan was too, about Monster Hunter World. So the monster design in that game is great. I don't know that I love the monster design in Dragon Quest XI. I don't love the style. So to me, that's kind of a knock on it for my personal take on the visuals. That's just a personal preference, I realize. But I don't love the design of stuff.
Well, personally, I think your personal opinion is shit. So we could probably just move Dragon Quest XI up there.
I would say
You should be a lawyer. That was good.
the interesting character design is part of the charm, I would say, and I would think if they went a different way, it wouldn't fit the tone or the design of that game. So, like, I think if anything, it fits it fits if anything. So that's my counterpoint for that. But
yeah, I agree with Kyle. I mean, it's probably not as interesting as something like Monster Hunter, but it is what that game is known for, and that type of design, and I think it works fine within that style.
Okay. I do love Greece. That one would be a toss-up for me between Assassin's Creed Odyssey and that one, with Octopath below those two. And I am totally okay with Dragon Quest XI taking the 5th spot in our top 5.
Sounds good.
So since we had a debate for Dragon Quest XI for a while, then I think in the final rankings it has to be number 5.
It's probably number 5. Yeah,
I think it should be 5.
You know, we didn't talk about God of War's visuals. We just put it on the list, and no one really talked about it.
Well, because I think we're going to talk about it when we get into comparisons with Red Dead and Detroit and all that.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to Red Dead Redemption 2, other than a few very standard open world game glitch moments, and they didn't happen very often, but they did happen. Other than that, I found virtually no flaws with the way that game looked. Personally, I thought Red Dead Redemption 2 was, I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. It looks.
I'm going to tell you. I know this is going to sound like, pretentious again, but native 4K does matter to me. And the reason I say that is because I've got the big screen and the monitor, and I'm pretty close to my screens. And when a game's not 4K, I can really tell. Like God of War, I think when I'm far away, God of War looks amazing. It really does. When I'm up close, I can see like the
checkerboarding.
Yes, the checkerboarding. On Red Dead and even Far Cry 5, you don't get the checkerboarding. You just get the native picture. But the difference, obviously, between Red Dead and like a Far Cry 5 is Red Dead is native 4K plus it just looks amazing. Like there's nothing like the characters, all of the characters, no matter where you are, look amazing. Like for me personally, I'm just going to say it, it's a lock for number 1. And I don't even love that game. But I think visually, I think it's a lock for number 1.
Wow.
I do too. And I kind of thought that we'd be battling between God of War, Forza, and I'm glad to hear Detroit as well when it comes to that second place spot. So I agree with you. I think Red Dead is the lock at the top. I don't know if Dan and Kyle are on the same page with that or not.
Yeah, I think y'all have that right on that. I think it's also just the functionality of that game, like you were saying, Tim. Just that there's not a lot of hiccups or anything, and it's a huge open world that looks that good, and there's so many random things that are happening that it still doesn't take like those dips and hiccups and little things that I'm used to in open world games. And maybe that's more performance and not visuals, but I think that since the visuals are so high and so demanding, usually those other things falter because of that. So
yeah, it's even just little moments like riding your horse into Saint Denis, which is kind of like the New Orleans style city in that game, at nighttime, and seeing the lanterns off the balconies and going through the streets with the street lamps, and there's people there. There's a beggar on the side of the road or whatever. It really truly looks like real life. It's
I would
crazy.
love to see that game on PC. Like I hope they bring it to PC.
It's gonna happen. It'll happen.
I'm sure it will. But again, like Red Dead Redemption, my favorite moment in that game was you're riding at night up towards a plantation amongst all this tree growth.
We'll be talking about
And
that scene forever.
It is, I mean, just that visual shot right there. I mean, just how good it looked. I mean, it was movie quality direction. It was just incredible.
That whole scene from start to finish.
And I don't think that with everything that it does with its storytelling and how it works those visuals in, it's got to be at the top of the list.
Well, then I'd like to make a case to put Detroit Become Human at number 2, primarily because the visuals are such a key part of the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
The facial animations, their expressions, the environment. Again, at times you forget it's a game and not watching a TV show. It really does look that good. And I thought they did an incredible job. There's a wide variety of environments that you go through, a surprising amount in that game. You're not just in the city the whole time. You know, there's times when you get out into the snow or into kind of a kind of old ruins type looking areas. There's an old amusement park. You're on an old ship at one point. There's a whole bunch of different environments. And I think it just looks immaculate every step of the way. So I think that should be number 2, although I know there's other games that are deserving. What do you guys think?
I think Forza Horizon 4 is what I would initially want to go to for number 2, just because of the photorealistic representation of the cars and location. I remember when that game came out, being in different groups, seeing like different screenshots people had posted in that, and some of them are just hard to tell if it was in a game or in real life. And when you're hitting that level, I just think, you know, it really deserves to be recognized. But I also think Detroit, you know, was hitting on that same level and probably had a larger function within the gameplay, like Tim was saying, with the facial animation. So I'd be okay putting Detroit at number 2, but I really like Forza close to it.
So this is going to sound like a nitpick on Forza Horizon 4 because the cars look amazing. The roads and environments as you're going high speed or just cruising at a normal speed all looks fantastic. What I think makes the game makes you totally realize, oh, this is just very video gamey, is when they have the characters get out and talk. And I realize that's not very often, but that is certainly not the highest of quality when it comes to visuals, in my opinion.
I agree. That's the same issue we were talking about with like Assassin's Creed and Spider-Man and stuff like that. That is a secondary part of the game. It's not important to the developers, and so they kind of, I don't want to say half-butt it, but they don't put as much detail into it. They don't put as much time into it, and therefore you notice it. Like that is definitely something I notice in Forza Horizon 4.
Well, and character models is not that developer's high point. It's you know, sports cars and stuff like that. So I think it is just some of the shortcomings. And
it doesn't happen much. It only happens during a very few scenes between certain, you know, quote unquote story progression through that game. But it's still there. It's still a part of the game, you know, and they still talk to you with their funky accents, whatever else, and it just doesn't quite fly. So the character models kind of kill that one for me. To me, it's really the only visual flaw in Forza Horizon 4, I would say, are the character models, but they are there. So that's why I would give it.
I'm going to say this. I am more impressed with God of War, not just because I like it better as a game than Detroit. Just because I think it's an action game and it has pretty open areas, not open world, but open areas. And every part of it's very detailed. Like I said, if you're not sitting right in front of the game to see the checkerboarding, from a distance, the game does look like it would be like a native 4K game. And I think for me personally, it's Red Dead then God of War. I just think God of War it's a better looking game, especially for an action game. No, they don't have the technology that Detroit uses for their characters, but Detroit also doesn't have as much going on while you play that game.
True.
God of War has way more things going on.
I'm definitely going to hitch my horse to Derek's wagon here. God of War has I know. I just like already saying it. I know it's very Red Dead. Anyways, God of War has art design. You know, like they are creating, you know, a sense of space here and an art style and everything like that, where a lot of these games on our list aren't, you know, and in fact, we kind of axed out a lot of games that kind of, you know, dive into that part of the visuals, which is, you know, the topic at hand here. So I don't know. I think God of War should be celebrated for that, for it's not this photorealistic sense of space where that exist here in reality. It's pure escapism at its finest. We're going to other realms. We're on a road trip through a fantasy world. It's very, very cool, and I think it deserves big ups for that.
Yeah,
lighting effects and all that.
I'm with you. I mean, all the special effects while you're in battle and stuff like that, everything remains real smooth. It's a nice fluid combat. It looks great. Everything going on from the different weapons, the special attacks, and it does it all within these environments that, like Derek said, they are very detailed and they look really pretty. And I agree that the artistic style of that maybe should be celebrated a little more. Where Detroit and Forza, those are more the super realistic, but there's not a lot else going on to those.
And the monster design, the character design.
Yeah,
as you meet the twin brothers who do the blacksmithing or whatever, as you meet the side characters that end up being very much more important than you realized, or maybe it's a villain, or I don't want to give too much away in case you haven't played it.
Everything's just memorable,
the visuals are striking.
It is, and every character, person, thing that you encounter in that game is gorgeous looking and has great artistic direction. Even though it's not native 4K, I could never fault it for it. I didn't notice the checkerboarding as much as Derek, but I still thought overall it was a very pretty game that was just so fluid in motion and held that high level.
And again, I'll repeat, I was sitting very close.
Sure.
So if I was sitting far away, I don't see it.
So Kyle, before we move on from, I actually kind of love this 1 and 2, by the way. If we're going to land at Red Dead 1, God of War 2, I love that. Kyle, are there any that you feel like were unfairly left off that didn't get a shot?
No, of the original list, no. I think the 5 that we're kind of whittling down to right now is
okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss you.
It's looking good. No. I've been speaking up.
Okay. All right. So if we like God of War there, at least for the moment, then it comes down really between Detroit and Forza. And back to your point, Kyle, between creating this totally new environment like God of War, they created all this new architecture and all these new statues and all this very brand new stuff, where with Detroit and Forza, it's how do we recreate real life as closely as possible, right? So where would you guys put Detroit and Forza? I already made my case for Detroit. We've been talking a little bit about Forza on and off as well. Where would you guys put those?
For me, I'd probably put Detroit next. I think Detroit does a really good job of immersing you in a really visual story. At no point, there's some uncanny valleyness to some of the character models, but for the most part, they nail it. And I get really sucked into the performances, and I get really attached to a lot of the emotional key moments because of how well that the everything is portrayed on screen. So I'd probably put Detroit next, personally.
I mean, I would actually put it on the same level as when I first played LA Noire back in the day. Yeah. And those facial animations were just amazing. I couldn't believe it. Looking for these little visual facial tics or whatever that they were giving away a secret or a lie. I feel like Detroit has that same level of next level facial animation compared to most games. That's just
let me just say this one thing, and I would probably put Detroit at 3, but for me, the environments were kind of bland for the most part. Again, they focus a lot on character animation because they want every character to feel real. David Cage's goal is for you to stare into their faces, watch their emotions, and he nails that. Nobody can say that he doesn't nail that. But for me, the world of Detroit in the future, while it has the design of something you would imagine would be the future, I just don't think it's very detailed and it doesn't look that great. I would still put it above Horizon 4 because of what we've talked about, whereas Horizon 4 is a bigger world, but there's a little bit, to me, less going on than in Horizon 4's open world compared to a Red Dead or something like that. Yeah. But there's a lot of detail for that game for an open world, and they do a really good job, but I still think Detroit is your 3, and then Forza Horizon 4 is your 4. But I'm just explaining why I wouldn't put Detroit above God of War or Red Dead. It's mainly because even though it's not this open world game, not even really that open area, I mean, it's a little bit open, it's just not very detailed in the world. It's more detailed in the characters.
Yeah. And Dan, I want you to talk about Forza real quick because you had that at number 2, and I don't want to just assume we're putting it below Detroit here.
Yep. And for me, it would be hard. I think you made a really good case for Detroit. So just when it comes back down to the visuals, those facial animations, the way they play into the gameplay, like you said, like LA Noire, just with how the game's played, it is more vital to that. So Forza is just really pretty game. I think it would play great no matter how pretty it was. But it's not as complete of a package. It does fall short on some of those character model moments and pulls you out some of that. So I think the arguments you guys have made probably hold up as much as I just really appreciate those cars and how pretty and realistic all of it looks. I think I'd probably go ahead and leave Detroit at 3 and Forza at 4.
Well, and I will say that there are few more gorgeous moments in gaming this year than cruising down at full speed on a highway that's right alongside the ocean. I mean, it is just really, really pretty.
Yep, at sunset,
At sunset, right? Yeah,
it's very cool. And like Derek said, I mean,
and the
it's
multiple seasons, by the way, look
Yeah,
amazing.
the season changes is so huge for that game. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so I think we've got 5 really good-looking games here, and I like this list. So we've got at number 5, Dragon Quest XI. Really pretty game, by the way. I know this is probably a given, but just for anyone who's listening who's thinking we're saying Dragon Quest isn't good looking, that's why it's at 5. Clearly not the case.
Yeah.
Gorgeous JRPG.
It's fun to be there.
Forza Horizon 4 in the number 4 spot. Detroit Become Human at number 3. God of War at number 2, and Red Dead Redemption 2 at number 1. And I like that. I think we at least with God of War and Dragon Quest, we're acknowledging that it doesn't have to be true to life, lifelike for it to be one of the best visual experiences. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Hey guys, speaking of visual experiences, I actually am finally diving into PSVR this holiday season.
Wow, all right.
We'll be opening it as a family. It's like a family gift on Christmas morning. We got the Moss and Astrobot package.
Astrobot, I hear great. Yeah.
Nice.
And a bunch of places have it for $200 with that bundle where you get the VR and those 2 games for $200. And then of course, like Derek mentioned,
Is that
there
deal still going on?
Oh yeah, still going on. Yeah, I just picked it up today actually.
All right.
Yep.
Cool.
Like Derek mentioned, right now you can get some really fully fledged VR games that came out in the last year and a half for super cheap right now, digitally especially. You can just go and buy them. Like Farpoint, for example, which is pretty well regarded from what I saw, was $8, stuff like that. So the other thing that I'm probably going to treat myself with, my in-laws send us money instead of gifts, so my wife and I can kind of splurge on something. My splurge there will probably be on the AIM controller that comes with the Firewall game. So
Yeah, you definitely want that.
That way I can get Farpoint and Firewall and play some shooties on my VR.
Yeah, let me know if you buy Farpoint, because if you do, then I'll just hook my VR up and download that game off your account.
Okay, will do. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that as we're talking about visuals. Cool. All right. Stretch out. Take a moment. It's time to get negative. Okay. We were just heaping praise on games. We were letting them know how pretty they are and how fun they are and how important this is to the story. Now we're going to talk about stuff we did not like in 2018. You guys ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Just give us your 1 or 2 first things that come to mind. And for the most part, let's keep it on stuff we've actually played. So for example, I could not sit here and tell you that Fallout 76 was my most disappointing game of the year, even though it's fun to say that to make people angry. I didn't actually play it. So that's not one that I can bring up. But if it is something that you played, then let us know why it was either the most disappointing or flat out worst game of the year. Derek, let's start with you this time.
Do you want me to list all of them?
You have that many?
Well, I have 3 of them.
Oh yeah, give us 3. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm just going to be real quick. I won't talk about them forever. I would say my top disappointment is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Again, not saying it's a terrible game. In fact, I think I rated it a 7.5 when I made my spreadsheet. So I don't think it's a terrible game. I just was disappointed because my hype level for that game, I think Tim and I talked about this. I think it was my second most hyped game. Like I wanted Assassin's Creed Odyssey and then Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And so when I played it, I was definitely disappointed by it. I don't even think a second playthrough like God of War would make a difference, because I think I played it in a time where I was pretty okay with gaming or was getting back to gaming. And it just was overall disappointment. Not what I wanted. The other two would be Fallout 76. Main reason that's a disappointment is it's just not that fun to me. When I played the beta, I enjoyed it, but as I played the full game, I just did not enjoy it. I have not invested as much time as I thought I was going to, especially after E3. That had actually moved up to my top 2 in games I was hyped for, so that's another disappointment. And then Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm convinced that when I actually dive in and really play it, I probably played 5 hours, so it's not like I only played 30 minutes. I will probably change my mind. Like, I don't think I'll walk away from it going, this was a disappointment. But for right now, it is. Like, it never hooked me, and it actually just irritated me. Like, it was everything I don't want in a game right now. I'm like, you're slow, you talk too much, you're just not fun to play. And that's just me. So, no, you're not going to see it in my top 10. It's not a game I'm thrilled with right now.
Sure. All right. I agree with a couple of those. Those are good picks, though. Kyle, let's go to you. What are one or a few of your more disappointing / worst games of the year? By the way, this is our TGT award, I should have said.
TGT. Real quick, I have Dynasty Warriors 9. I don't know how you mess up a game that's already not very good.
How did that do so poorly? That's crazy.
Every single fundamental change that they made to that series was bad. The combat, the open world change, everything about it is just bad. It's just a bad game. That game should feel bad for how bad it is. And I have one other. I'll just go on real quick. State of Decay 2. Is that game even working now? I mean, the game was never working when it came out. It was never working in the weeks that I was trying to play it. I just wanted that game to be good, and I just wanted to play with friends with that game. I've never been so frustrated at spending $30 on a game, which is not that much. Just like just a waste of my time.
Right. Nope. I agree with that. State of Decay 2 is my pick as well for most disappointing game of the year. Really didn't enjoy it. And it wasn't even that I said, hey, this game has some shortcomings, but it's kind of fun. I would put Sea of Thieves in that category. Mm-hmm. That game has some shortcomings, but it's still kind of fun. It's really pretty to look at, and I still enjoyed some of what the gameplay loop had to offer. State of Decay 2 wasn't even fun. Even when I was trying to get through the main game loop, it felt like work. It did not feel fun at all. I felt like I was always behind. Battling the zombies was always kind of glitchy, and there's a few moments that I thought were satisfying that reminded me of the old, the original State of Decay. But multiplayer was a mess. It didn't work as smoothly as it should have. I don't know. I felt very disappointed with State of Decay 2. So that is by far my pick for this year as well. There's a few others that I didn't love, but that certainly was the top. I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider is one that I wanted to love, and I ended up just liking. But it's hard for me to put that in as a disappointment. It was still a fun, blockbuster experience. So for me, it's definitely State of Decay 2. What about you, Dan?
For me, probably my biggest disappointment was Below. I don't think I knew enough about the game and was probably maybe a little unjustly hyped for it. To me, it looked really cool. I liked the atmosphere, the music, and what seemed like kind of like a Zelda-like game. Underneath of it also has some roguelike elements, some survival game elements, and just together as a package, I'm not really thrilled with it, not really enjoying it. Feel a little more frustrated with some of the mechanics and stuff there, and it's just not worth the experience. Glad I got it through Game Pass, but still, I was expecting to like it a lot more than I did. So that was probably my biggest disappointment. Another game that I would probably say was just a little disappointing to me, and it was also one of my favorite games of this year. So it's a little divisive, but Red Dead Redemption 2. I was really excited for it. I was really hyped. I was like, this looks amazing. It's going to be Rockstar. I mean, just can't wait. And there was so much great things in that game that I enjoyed. And it did such a unique and incredible job with its world building and its characters and how it did all that. But the rules it demanded you play the game at kind of, I don't know, hindered me a little ways into that experience. I'd say right away I came into it very excited, and it just kind of slowed me down to a crashing halt. Yeah. And I think once I got used to playing the game on its terms, it was really enjoyable, but it was just coming to those terms. I think that I was a little disappointed that I don't know if it was just my expectations, and it was very much Rockstar dictating how this game was going to be played, and I see why they did it after finishing it. I appreciate it, but it kind of discouraged me a little bit along the way.
Right. One of my favorite podcast hosts, Damon Hatfield from IGN's Game Scoop, which I still love that show a lot. I listen to it all the time.
Yep.
His take on Red Dead Redemption 2 was not that he disliked it. There's so much he loved about it, but he said they committed the biggest sin of video gaming, and that is it just wasn't that fun to play. Like, to pick up and move around and shoot back. That's his take on it. And I know a lot of people share that opinion. I disagree with that now that I put so much time into it and I progressed so far and did so much side stuff, and I loved the hunting. And I can't tell if it's just that I got used to the rules of the game. I like the way you put that. The game sets up rules you have to follow, the way that you move, the way you do certain things. I got accustomed to it, and I was able to actually fairly quickly do the things I wanted to do. But there was a bit of a learning curve. Whereas when I jump over to something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example, everything I wanted to do, it just played that way already. It felt like I'd never had a moment where I thought, boy, I wish I could fill in the blank. Like, you could scale walls that normally you can only climb in Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now all of a sudden Assassin's Creed's letting you climb. Stuff like that they really let you do. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 certainly has a lot of game world rules that I could see why it could be disappointing to a lot of folks. That's not one I really fight for a lot when people say it just wasn't that fun to play. I'm like, I get it. You do actually have to invest time, and you have to be able to sit back, relax, and just play that game with nothing else distracting you.
I'll agree that it's pretty demanding. I have disagreeing with a lot of stuff that's being said right now, but I not from you, Tim, but because you're gonna find out very soon that I think this game is near perfect. But I guess we'll get there.
Yeah, no, I love the game, but I can see why someone would find it disappointing.
But I absolutely see what Dan was saying, how you do have to play it on its terms, and like you were saying, Tim, it does take a little getting used to with the controls and everything. There is a learning curve and everything, but like once you're there and it's the only game that you're playing, there's a flow to it that you sink into, and you're rewarded for it too.
I got to a point in the game where I didn't want to advance the story because I was having so much moment to moment fun because I had finally learned the systems. I knew how to do what I'm trying to do. So I would go out and go hunting. I would cook up that meat. I would then season that meat so it gives you all these extra boosts on your stamina core and on your health core and stuff like that. And I would make sure I had horse meals for my horse, and I would save up money, or I'd go rob steal stagecoaches and stuff so I could buy the new Arabian horse that was all of a sudden available, things like that. I found myself totally loving that and feeling a little surprised that I'm essentially playing a cowboy action RPG.
Yeah,
and it was
Simulator 2019.
And it was, and so I found myself lost in it, not wanting it to be any more than exactly what it was. Like, I loved that about it.
I learned to appreciate that the more that I played that game. But I mean, it was, figuring out how to do that. And I did take my time with it. Once I started playing this game, I played it right when it came out release, and I dedicated almost 2 months to it. So it was the only game I played until it was finished. And I snuck in a little this here and there, just I picked up Assassin's Creed on a holiday sale. I had to try 5 minutes of it, but for the most part, I mean, it was a game I dedicated myself to, and I really thought that the experience they were trying to curate there was very high quality. It was a great experience, but you had to realize that they are crafting this for you, and there's no way that you're going to sprint through it or run through it. You have to sink into those cowboy boots and walk the prairie to really enjoy what this game's trying to do for you. And it does it unlike anything else. And that's why I say it's one of my favorite games of the year, but it was also
a disappointment.
It all took me a little bit. It wasn't.
You wanted it to be a no-brainer #1 pick. Yep. Nothing's even close.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted. And there was just some aspects that mixed into all that to where it was a troubling experience for me to get there. So I just think there was other games, me personally, that were maybe just no-brainer fun from the word go, where this was just exactly what it was meant to be, which I thought it was great.
Can I say two things?
Yes.
First of all, I agree with Dan on what he's saying about Rockstar, what he's saying about Red Dead. And again, I said it already, and I truly believe this as somebody who knows me as a gamer. When I'm not in the mood, I'm not in the mood. Once I get in the mood, I think I'll fall in love with the game. That being said, I want to talk about Below for a second. I actually think that if the developers of Below will listen to the feedback, that game could absolutely be amazing if they'll but they have to be willing to do this. They're going to have to change their game a little bit, and they're going to have to make it what I would say a little bit easier. Yeah. Because the thing that discouraged me with this game, the reason I'm saying this is because I actually booted it up and was like, this game is cool looking. It feels good. I want to like this. And so I played it for a little bit, and I was like, no, I don't like this. And, of course, that's not a shock to most people because it's an indie garbage trash. But I also was giving it a fair shot. And the thing with this game is it kind of falls into that trap that a lot of these indie games are, and they're, like, making them unnecessarily fun. And they're making it where it feels like you're never going to get to the end unless you hate your life.
Wait, unnecessarily unfun or fun?
Unfun.
Oh, okay. Right.
Unnecessarily, I was probably just saying difficult, but it's just they're falling into these traps. Like, we got to make this game really difficult to be edgy. No, you just need to make it fun. And this game is same thing with like Dead Cells was fun, even though I knew it was going to fail.
You watch your mouth before you say what you're about to say.
Dead Cells was fun, even though I knew I was going to fail. So I never knocked it, even though I knew I never was going to beat it. Below is too many chores to do. You can be one-shotted without having a clue you're going to get one-shotted. I never died in Dead Cells going, I had no idea how that guy got me or how that trap got me.
Well,
he was right there.
Yeah, it's the darkness and that perspective pulled out so much. I mean,
it's really so zoomed out.
An unfair advantage. It'd be so pretty if they zoomed in just a little bit more. And
we need to all game like Derek and scoot right up our noses to the screen.
That's what I do.
That's
I play like this. But seriously, I really think if they'll I'm gonna say drop their pride and say, okay, we didn't create the best game we could and make it a little bit easier. Maybe do something with the traps, do something with save systems and shortcuts and stuff like that. They could actually end up having a really cool Zelda-like experience because the gameplay feels really good. Yeah. The world looks really good. But with all the feedback, like the reviews that I watched, like even IGN gave it a decent review. They gave it like a 6.9. But nothing that guy said in the review sold me on the game. Not one thing he said made me go, I gotta play this. In fact, he discouraged me. I was like, this sounds like a chore. Yeah. But I'm still going to try it just because I want to say I tried it. Yep. And after I tried it, I was like, no, it's a chore and I'm not going to do this. This is dumb.
Some of the other games that the community picked out as most disappointing of the year, stuff like Darksiders 3 was mentioned as a disappointment this year. Of course, Fallout 76 was a popular pick among our listeners and group members. It's nice to see that Just Cause 4 wasn't on the list. I'm not sure if that's because it's not a disappointment or because no one's playing it. I'm not sure. Ni no Kuni 2 was mentioned by a number of folks as being a disappointment.
I mentioned it. Play it a lot, but get rid of the familiars, the coolest part of that game. I mean, and then you add this base camp building, another RPG that needs base camp building.
Yep.
I really have zero interest in base camp building, by the way. So
no, it's horrible.
If you're a developer who's pathetic and watching our show because we're lame, please stop making base camps. I don't care.
What if you started Minecraft?
A number of folks mentioned Sea of Thieves, but not as many. So I'm glad to hear that. I do think that game is.
I hear Sea of Thieves is really cool now too. Like there's a lot of content on it now.
They have added a lot to it.
I really think you and Tim should be best friends. I mean, not only do you look the same, but you both have terrible, terrible taste in video games. I just want to tell you that.
I'll take that as a compliment. That Derek thinks my taste is terrible. State of Decay 2 and Fallout 76 were the two by far most mentioned as disappointing this year.
Yeah, but can I say one thing, Tim? I'm never proud of you. I'm always proud of Kyle.
Fair enough. That's fair.
That's why I'm here. Just to be proud of.
And last but not least, I did see some folks jot down Vampire as a disappointment for them this year.
Vampire was a lot of fun. People need to get over it.
Yeah, people, listen to Kyle.
Yeah.
I have no complaints about that game. And I put 4 or 5 hours in. Now, it didn't hook me, but
I didn't beat it either. I probably will, but it's fun. It's a very interesting concept. Don't nod. It's a very interesting turn after Life is Strange. It's like we're gonna do a weird vampire game with Dark Souls combat. It's like okay.
And while the combat's not the greatest, it's also not terrible.
Not
So
terrible. No.
I think the only thing that I could say would be disappointing about that game, and I'm not thinking in terms of me because I didn't pay $60 for it, but for somebody who may have paid $60, they might be like, this game doesn't feel AAA. But neither did Darksiders 3. So I think some of these developers need to know, maybe drop it $10 and just say, hey, we're not AAA level. We're not Assassin's Creed Odyssey. We're not Red Dead Redemption 2. $50. Then I don't think you would be disappointed with that game because it's not bad at all. It's actually quite good.
All right. It's time for the granddaddy of them all, the overall game of the year, top 10 list. Dan and Kyle, we need your help to come up with a good list because Derek and I both have trash opinions. So
no, speak for yourself. I'm actually quite educated and amazing looking at the same time.
Yes, very true. Both of those things. Okay.
So and my cup is smaller today. See,
that was so funny. Derek had this gigantic solo cup that when he held it, it actually looked like it was a normal size solo cup, and he's just a really small person. Really tiny. That's my favorite thing.
It's a cup a lot like this one. It's just double the size.
It's much bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I pulled up a list here of, and this is in alphabetical order, of a number of notable games this year. I may have left some off. I'm going to read through it real quick so our listeners know what we're looking at. You guys start thinking through. Same process. We'll move over one at a time. I won't really limit us to how many, but if you really don't feel strongly that it could make a top 10 list, I would say don't bother. But if you think you can make a case for this to squeeze into the top 10, it's certainly worth nominating and moving over. So let me read through the list quickly for our listeners. We've got A Way Out, Ashen, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Battlefield 5, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Celeste, Darksiders 3, Dead Cells, Detroit, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Dragon Quest XI, Fallout 76, Far Cry 5, Forza Horizon 4, God of War, Guacamelee 2, Hitman 2, Iconoclasts, Into the Breach, Just Cause 4, Madden, MLB, NBA, and NHL, Monster Hunter World, Ni no Kuni 2, Octopath Traveler, Overcooked 2, Pillars of Eternity 2, Pokemon Let's Go, Red Dead Redemption 2, Sea of Thieves, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Soul Calibur 6, Spider-Man, Starlink, State of Decay 2, I don't know why I put that on there, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, The Banner Saga 3, The Messenger, Valkyria Chronicles 4, one of the more underappreciated games of the year, Vampire, and Yakuza 6, another, from what I've heard, underappreciated game of the year. So, did I leave anything off, first of all, that you guys can think of? I know I didn't put in more recent ones like Below or Grease. But I don't think either one of those will make our top 10 anyway.
No, I think you've hit all my major.
What was that, Kyle?
I said, yeah, I think you got most of them here.
Okay.
Or all of them. I can't think of one. I mean, Grease might be on my top 15 maybe, but I couldn't make a case.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to make a case for that one. I haven't played enough of it, and Dan and Derek would never lower themselves to play.
No, why would they?
As soon as you guys start talking about it, I would just boot you out of the room.
All right, so let's start with Kyle this time, and let's have you select a game that needs to be moved over into the next column I that I have here to be considered for the top 10.
I'm going to go for one that's not obvious. I'm going to go A Way Out. I think it's one of the most unique, amazing co-op experiences I've ever had, ever. So I'd put that right over there. If I have to fight for it more, I'll say more things later.
Okay, Derek?
Let's go ahead and keep it up top. And I want to move Ashen over.
Okay. Dan?
I'm going to go right for the top, and my personal game of the year, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Oh, he's giving it away. Is that your number one?
Yep.
Did you expect that, by the way, when you bought it on sale? You're like, yeah, I might get to this, but then you bought it on sale. Did you expect that?
Well, I did. I knew that I was going to love the game. Origins was probably one of my favorite games last year, too. So I was expecting that I was going to like it very much if it was more of the same. It surprised me with some of the changes it made. The naval combat, I've always been a big fan of. Black Flag, Rogue, those naval combats. I've always liked them. I thought this was a much more improved system, and so I don't know. It just ended up surprising me. It was a lot more everything that I like, Witcher 3 level type missions
Yeah.
and side contracts, and it's a lot of everything I love with an open world action RPG, and exactly what I wanted, and I can't fault it.
And they did a really smart thing. They incorporated a way that you could continue to loop through the gameplay and keep looting more items by helping either the Spartans or the Athenians take over different regions. And then a new leader is appointed, and you can go back and do it again if you want to. So they provided a really fun gameplay loop there as well. I'm going to move Celeste over just because all the other outlets are doing it, so we should too. No, I'm just kidding. No, just kidding. I'm doing it because I'm doing it because I legitimately think it is one of the best games of this year. But
Oh boy.
I have
Sorry.
a young daughter, so feminist rights.
I've never even been able to explain to Derek that there are no feminist agendas in this game. All right, let's go back over to Kyle.
I have a young daughter.
I'll go for some low-hanging fruit, Red Dead. Go ahead and pull that over.
Okay, Derek.
All right. Did we move God of War over? Let's just
Did
move
not.
God of War over.
Okay, Dan.
Let's do Marvel Spider-Man.
It's a great pick.
Spider-Man. All right, I'm moving Dead Cells over. I'm the Indie King. tonight.
Yay!
Gosh, Celeste and Dead Cells.
Yeah, man.
Why do we do this show
You
together?
have a voice, Tim. I will back you.
Thank you, Dan. All right, Kyle.
Let's get Detroit on there.
Okay. Derek.
Far Cry 5.
Dan.
I don't think it's gonna last, but I would throw Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Yep. I have other games that are higher on my personal list I want to bring over, but just because I can't wait to hear Derek's reaction, I'm going to pull over Into the Breach.
I bought that on sale. I haven't started it yet, so.
Of course you bought that on sale, Kyle. Of course you did.
Right.
So
So you and
fun.
I agree on everything except indies, and all of a sudden I'm wrong all the time.
We do.
Kyle and I literally buy everything.
Into the Breach is so good. Kyle, back to you.
I don't think it's gonna last long either. I'm gonna say Yakuza 6, though. Very high
Okay.
up on mine.
I do want to hear you make a case for that one, though, because
Oh, I will.
Yep, I do too. I've always wanted to get in the Yakuza series. I got.
By the way, that game
I got-
is on sale this weekend.
It is
got
on sale.
dollars.
I got you.
I'd
Got
play it if you have
like
that.
Kim Y and Kim Y 2, so
Okay.
I got 2 of them ready to go. I just haven't started them yet. Or 0 and Kim Y is what I got.
Yeah.
Derek, what do you got?
Let's move Forza Horizon 4 over.
Good pick.
Dan?
Of the list we got there,
Or
There's
anything that
not-
we don't have on here
yep,
is fine.
there's not much else that I would fight for
Okay.
that needed to be on this top 10 list. I think we got most of what I would have. If I was going to throw anything else on there, no, I'm good.
I'm gonna move Monster Hunter World over there. It's one of my favorite games of the year.
I want you to move Monster Hunter over there, so I actually agree with you. Can you
Yay.
move Dragon Quest 11 over there?
Yes, thank you for saying that one. I haven't played enough of it to make a case for it myself, but I have a feeling I'm going to enjoy that as I get through it.
Move Super Smash Brothers over there for me.
Okay. Super Smash Brothers
Now-
Wii U port.
I don't. Yeah, like
Hey,
that's what I
hey.
want to know.
Excuse me.
It's definitely better
Play
than.
this and turn
whole
I'll
new
tell
game.
you. It's different
Whole
physics,
new.
I promise.
Okay.
I haven't played it. I will say this, though. We talked with Bobby Pauls earlier. He was in our first episode, which is live now. But anyway, we talked to Bobby Pauls, and even he, the Nintendo guru himself, did not have this as the best Nintendo game of the year and had some gripes with it for being too much like the Wii U version. I'm just floating that out there.
Interesting.
All right. For me, a dark horse candidate, although I don't think it's going to make the list, but I just want to show it a little bit of love and talk about it for a second, is Valkyria Chronicles 4. Really fun RPG, strategy RPG with some creative ways to do turn-based and action kind of World War II strategy fighting. It's really fun. I've heard it's an incredibly long game. I think Derek told me that actually, and I've heard it from others too. Really, really long, intense game. And I like it. I've probably put 10, 12 hours in it, and it's one of those ones that I regularly pick back up and go through again. So I just wanted to put it on the list to recognize it, even though probably not a top 10 material for this year, but really good game. And it's on sale for $30 on every platform right now: Switch, Xbox, and PS4. I think.
Yeah, can we just? I know nobody's gonna fight for this game, but I just want to give it some love, and that's Soul Calibur 6.
Yeah, man.
I know you guys don't like fighters, but
I love that game.
The game has
beat every single story mission in that game. It's
got
really good.
2 story modes. It's a beautiful game. It's great fighting. It needs love.
Okay. The only other one that we haven't moved over that I personally really, really enjoyed this year was Octopath Traveler, but it's one that, similar to Valkyria Chronicles 4, not going to make the top 10, I don't think. But if you like that style of game, if you like JRPGs, there's no reason to skip this one. It's fantastic. All right, so we have a pretty solid list here. What is that? 20 games maybe we need to trim down. So that's pretty good.
We're doing top 10, right?
We are. We're going to have a top 10 here.
Okay, good.
So what we've moved over is A Way Out. And you know what? I'm going to organize these just because I'm a nerd and because it's annoying that they're not in order.
You're a nerd.
Yeah, I know. A Way Out, Ashen, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Celeste, Dead Cells, Detroit, Dragon Quest XI, Far Cry 5, Forza Horizon 4, God of War, Into the Breach, Monster Hunter, Octopath, Red Dead, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Soul Calibur 6, Spider-Man, Smash, Valkyria, and Yakuza. I'm going to move up the ones that, to me, since I'm in control of the board here, but to me feel like shoe-ins for somewhere in the top 10 based on what I've heard you guys say already, and based on my opinions. I feel like Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a shoe-in. I feel like God of War is a shoe-in for somewhere up here.
Yeah.
I think Red Dead is going to land up here somewhere because Kyle and I both have a weird crush on it, and Dan even liked it.
No, I really liked it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know I had my gripes with it, but I really enjoyed the game. It's just,
yeah,
I said it.
Am I stepping too far to say I assume Spider-Man will be in the top 10?
I think so.
Would be. I think it'd be.
I think it should be.
Yeah, I absolutely think it should be.
I'll put it kind of floating in the middle here, right? So we're moving it up. I'm not sure that A Way Out. I think Ashen has a good shot of making it. I love that game too.
I think that the limited time I've been able to put into it, I would say it should be up there. If we can't have Dark Souls Remastered on this list, I think Ashen should be on there.
Fair. I personally love both Dead Cells and Detroit, but I won't assume they're on the list just yet. I might float them in the middle because I'm going to fight for them, but I'm not going to assume they'll make it. I do think Far Cry 5 is going to make the final 10.
Yep.
Kyle, do you not think so?
It wouldn't be on my list. I'll just say that. I like that too. That's fine, but yeah,
I'll float it in the middle here.
Hear what people say about that one.
Far Cry 5 better be on our list.
That ending, man. Oof.
The ending's the best part of that game.
That was so cool. So cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really excited for New Dawn. I think the way that it sets up is awesome. So
yep. Spoilers.
You're going to hear me contradicting myself a lot while talking about Far Cry. So
I know it sounds like it.
Yeah,
I'm actually not going to make a strong push for Celeste to be on the final top 10. I do think it was one of the better. I think it's the best, just pure platform puzzler of the year. But there's too many other games. It's not. Just to be totally honest, it didn't quite make my personal top 10. So as much as I enjoy it, there were too many other games that I liked more. So I'm not going to push for that one. What about Forza Horizon 4? I know it's beautiful. I know some of you guys love
up on my personal list.
It is high up there. What about you, Dan?
It makes my personal list, like Derek said, throwing on a soundtrack and racing around in that world is just some great good times. I'm not even a racing guy, and I love that game.
All right, listen, I want to hear, because even though I've been ripping on Kyle tonight, I want to hear Kyle's opinion on Yakuza 6, and I want him to talk without spoiling about the story. Like, if I was to buy this game tonight, could I play the game and still have an understanding of what's going on?
That's the worst part about this game, is that the barrier to entry at this point is pretty high. It's not. I'm not gonna be like the Kingdom Hearts marketing right now, where they're like, "Don't worry, you can jump in, understand everything." Spoilers, you can't and you won't. Sorry, everybody, you got to play all the games in Kingdom Hearts. It's not gonna make sense to you. Yakuza is kind of the same way. Everything is really reliant on familiar faces, familiar story arcs, and your knowledge of 1 through 5, including 0. Now there's going to be overarching things themes that you'll be able to connect to and stuff like that, but like you're not going to know the depth and the nuances and the minutia details of these relationships. These long-standing. The series is 15 years old now. You know, it's just like it's incredible. So I mean, like the barrier to entry is high for this game. So like I think that may even keep it out of like the 10 because it's not universal. You know what I mean? And you can't even play 3, 4, and 5 right now here in America. Not unless you have a PS3 or a PS2 or something. So it's
that's where I started the series. I didn't start with 0 or 1 or 2. I think I started with 3 and 4. I think are the 2 that I beat.
Yeah.
And then I got 5 for free, but never played it. And then I got 0 and I played a little bit of it. So I want to finish 0.
I would say that even just beating a couple of them, it puts you in a good enough spot to know everybody. Like because everyone is cyclical. Like there's hardly new characters unless they're there to die. You know? So the people who are always there are the people who have always been there. So even if you just play a couple games, the familiarity is there. And man, it's one of the best for me, who's played all the games and has been playing since launch. It's one of the best narratives ever. It's so good. Like, I mean, it's 15 years of payoff, and that series is a Japanese soap opera. Like, it's just drama to the nth degree and melodrama for days, and just lots of really fun beating up and stuff like that. I love the combat in those games. It's open world RPG-ish, but not like GTA. Like it's its own.
Isn't the combat a little bit like a fighting game?
It is. It's kind of like, imagine like 3D Final Fight, or not Final Fight, Fist of Fury. You know, like or Double Dragon. You know, it's like it's like 3D side-scrolling. You know, like it's the revolution of that series. I would say the revolution of the beat 'em up.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'll probably just buy it.
Yeah,
if you were going to start with 0 or 1, Kyle, which one would you start with? 0
0
or 1?
for sure. I played 1 first, but playing 0 makes 1 better. You know, not a lot of prequels do that. Like I would argue, this might be controversial, that Rogue One makes like Episode 4 better in a lot of ways, just how it sets up things.
I agree with that. Yeah,
good. I would get as controversial as I thought it would be. Star Wars is so heated these days, everybody. It's hard to bring it up. But like it makes a lot of things better in 4 that because of the stuff that happens in Rogue One. I would argue this is the case for that as well.
Okay. Could I catch up on YouTube and or I don't know, reading the story up to this point and play 6 and enjoy it?
All the games have a very, very, very in-depth and very good catch-up thing built into the game.
Oh.
So if you want to learn all the stuff that happened in all the other games, that's all going to be there for you.
So you could get 6, and if you do all the reading, you could catch up to where
it's just I have a hard time for me, like remembering which Japanese name is attached to which Japanese character. You know, it's
wow, so racist.
I know. Excuse me. I know. Yeah, it's very hard for me to keep it all. It's all the names like sorted. You know.
Sure.
So
I gotcha.
Very, very hard for me. So like, and I know the game, so sometimes I'm even like, I know the face, I know the character model, but like when they're throwing around the name, I'm like, who the hell is that again? I can only imagine for newcomers, it's probably a little overwhelming. But all the information's there for sure.
So would you say 6 though? Was it a great game? I mean, would it be on your top 10 list?
6 is probably in my top 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite narratives in video games so
far.
All right,
well said.
It builds up so much. There's so much narrative and so much story.
Well, I have it now. I just bought it, so it's
woo! All right,
we have it now. Sweet.
Yeah, I was logging in to PlayStation Store on my computer, and that's why I wanted him to talk about it, because I was already probably gonna buy it because I like the Yakuza games a lot. The only thing holding me back was that I hadn't beaten 0, but I think I'm gonna invest time in 0 and then move to 6.
I feel like going back to 0 after 6, it doesn't feel that bad either, because those games weren't made too far apart from each other. So like, and they're actually a little bit different in the terms that they control, like combat wise. So like they complement each other well without needing to play 0 before 6. So if you go back to it, like it's not time wasted.
Okay. All right. Well, I personally have games like Celeste, Into the Breach, Octopath Traveler, and Valkyria Chronicles 4. Those all barely missed the cut for me personally. So I'm not going to push them to make our list. I think just mentioning them as, hey, let's move these over, they're really good, is good enough for me. So I'm okay with leaving those out. So what about A Way Out, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Soul Calibur 6, and Super Smash?
I honestly, on my list, Tomb Raider would be the only one that would probably make it on those.
Where would you put that one?
For me, it would probably be towards the bottom of my list. I'd put it at probably number 8. of games that I played this year.
Okay.
But I think with the arguments some of you guys are making with these other games, that it probably isn't going to quite make this list, and I'd be okay letting go of it.
What about Kyle and Derek though? I don't want to have you give it up just yet if they have it on their lists.
It didn't make my list, but I actually find myself liking that game a lot more than other people seem to. I think it's just people had their expectations all over the place, maybe. But
Yeah.
I landed.
I really
that
liked
game
it.
landed right where I thought it was going to land for me, and I thought it was great. So didn't make my top 10, but I think it's a solid game.
I think it's a solid game. It's in my top 10, but it's it's literally 10. But so I wouldn't fight for it. Like if there was another game that somebody else felt like, again, let's say Kyle's like, please put Yakuza 6 in, even though none of us have experience, I wouldn't say no. Shadow of Tomb Raider should
Well,
go.
Derek, what about Soul Calibur 6 though compared to Shadow? As far as the top 10 goes, of course, because they're very different.
I think Soul Calibur 6 is the better game. Again, I understand they're not the same game at all. I'm saying better experience, I should say. For me personally, but that's again because I was so disappointed by what I felt like Shadow of Tomb Raider should have done. It kind of deviated from what I liked about the Tomb Raider game since the reboot. But I'm not going to fight for Soul Calibur 6. I just wanted to put it out there that I think it's an amazing game. If Kyle jumps on the bandwagon and says, hey, let's put it in the top 10 somewhere, then I'll fight for it there. But I know Dan and you didn't play it. So,
well, Kyle, what would you say between Soul Calibur 6 and Super Smash Ultimate?
I'm going to go Super Smash Ultimate to me. I don't know if I'm going to die on that hill, though. Everyone seems very cold about it here.
I like Smash Brothers. I just don't think it was such an improvement over the Wii U version.
I think it is. I think they added like a lot more modes. It's a lot more single-player focused. Wii U
Tons of characters.
Bare bones.
Yeah.
Like Wii U is just like you can fight each other, and that's it.
Okay.
We have kind of a classic mode, you know.
And I agree with all that and everything. I just think that it's probably not going to be on my personal top 10. I don't know that I'd fight for the game.
And it's lower on my top 10. Super Smash Bros. Is a really special series for me. So, like, just the fact that it's not even in my top 5 this year just really speaks more to the year and not how much I liked or didn't like Smash Brothers.
Sure.
So, like, even that's one that's a little lower. And, like, I could see myself siding with a lot of you guys on some of these other ones that were placed higher on this list, even though it might not be on my personal list.
So I've moved A Way Out, Celeste, Into the Breach, Octopath Traveler, and Valkyria Chronicles 4 out of consideration. Any arguments against those, especially since 4 out of those 5 are ones that I wanted? What about A Way Out, Kyle? Is that one you want to fight for?
I mean, no. I mean, that game, it really depends on how special your experience was with your co-op partner and how you know.
Oh, it was special.
How much you were able to. I saw the video or the pictures. So, and how able you were.
Did
to
you
play
see
it,
the
like,
one
in 1 or
that I
2
took
saves.
of us? He was boosting me up, and we're
Yes,
holding
that's
hands.
exactly the one I have in my
And I
head
zoomed
right
in
now.
on us holding hands.
It's just super zoomed in on it. Yeah, it's so great.
I still think if Tim and I would have actually finished that game, which we've talked about it for about 9 months straight, if we would actually finish
so
it,
good.
that's what I'm saying. Like
so
every
good.
person I've talked to is like, "Dude, it's great. You got to finish it."
Oh, it's
All right,
like
but Derek, tell the people the truth. When I say, "Hey, do you want to play something?" What are you usually doing?
Running.
No, you're going to bed. I'm going to bed. I'm tired.
Well, because I ran and then I came inside and went
That's
to
true.
bed.
That's true.
That's fair.
All right.
So A Way Out is great. If y'all have not finished it, finish it, and then let me know how wrong we all were for not adding to the top 10 later next year.
Well, then, Kyle, since that one kind of got forced out there at the end, why don't you nominate the first one? I'm securing. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and grab these other 2 as well. I'm going to secure these 5: Assassin's Creed, God of War, Red Dead, Far Cry 5, and Spider-Man. But anything else for right now is up for nomination to remove from the list. So you get to go first. Which one would you kick off of the list? We have to get rid of 5.
If we've got to get rid of something here out of the stuff here, and this is more so I just want to hear Derek talk about why he likes the game so much, but I've only played just about an hour of Ashen. It's good. Don't know if it's top 10 worthy. Why don't you tell me why you think that should stay on the list?
And when Derek's done, I got stuff to say too. I love this game.
Great.
Yeah.
So
For me, Ashen's a top 5 game on my personal list. mainly because, first of all, artistically, it's very nice looking. I do hate the screen tearing, but that's a minor gripe. But the art style, the world is really, really nice looking. It plays very smooth. I wouldn't say it's as smooth as a Souls or Bloodborne game, even though I would compare it more to Dark Souls than I would Bloodborne. But it's still very smooth. Like, there's never been a time where I hit a button and the character didn't immediately go into it.
There is a responsiveness to it.
Yes, it's very responsive. It's very accurate on what it's supposed to do. Plus, I've noticed that, and Tim and I talked about it when we talked about Ashen on our show. I love the fact that every weapon you use changes the style, like your play style.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for instance, I always use the example of I picked up this axe, I started upgrading it, and then I realized that the axe is power attack, or it's our trigger attack was a leaping, like, flip attack, which covers a lot of area and is actually pretty darn powerful. And then obviously it has its quick attacks as well. And then compared to, a weapon I just unlocked, or not unlocked, but picked up tonight that's actually more powerful than my axe, it's more, even though it's my lighter weapon, it still plays more like a heavy weapon, and it has more powerful attacks. So the play style is different. But some of the things that I love about the game is the boss fights so far. While none of them have been really hard, I've beat 3 bosses, and I have not died on one of them. I don't think I've died once. To the bosses, they're still unique and fun to play. And I actually think it's kind of good that you don't die a lot on them, because I would say this game differs from Dark Souls in that area as well. It's kind of harder to get back to a boss than it is.
It doesn't have the same
Souls.
Shortcut unlocks.
Yeah, because it's an open world structure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of traveling. They do have fast travels that you can unlock and things like that. But overall, I've talked about it a lot. It's just a lot of fun. I was actually caught off guard by this game. I decided to buy it with a gut feeling, and I do not regret it. I'm so happy I did. It is top 5, and I continue to play it. Like tonight, before we started doing the recording, I was like, what do I want to play? And I bought a lot of games. Like, I just bought Yakuza 6, I bought Spyro, I bought all these games on these sales, and I'm like, I'm going to play Ashen.
Yeah, I've got Ashen in my top 10 as well, so I have a tough time moving it off just yet.
Got some love here. Cool.
But it is a valid question. But yeah, everything Derek said and more. I actually had a little tougher time with the bosses than Derek did. I guess I'm not as good. But but it is a great game. One that I would think we should consider is Soul Calibur 6. Does that belong? Actually, I'll lump that in with Super Smash Ultimate. Not because I think they're bad games. I haven't played either one. But I'm just curious, when you look at Ashen, Dead Cells, Detroit, Dragon Quest, Monster Hunter, Forza, Yakuza, Shadow, do we want to make a case for those 2, or should we move them down?
I don't know. Me personally, those would be the 2 games that I would put first on the chopping block. I'm not saying either of them are bad games or bad fighting games. I just don't think they hold up to the rest.
Yeah. I'm pretty okay with that myself. Even with Super Smash Brothers, it's just there's too many good games in front of us here.
Derek, what do you think with
something's got to give?
No, I'm not gonna. I told you I won't fight for it. I'm fine.
Okay. All right, Dan, why don't you nominate one to kick off here? We still need to get rid of 3 more.
Out of the ones that we have listed right there, the one that I would want to remove first would probably be Monster Hunter World. I know Tim's going to have a hard time letting that one go. For me, I thought it was fine. I grinded through the first few worlds. I just thought the environments were a little bland, confusing. I didn't, especially wasn't a huge fan of the traversal, and finding my way around sometimes was rather confusing. The combat I wasn't a big fan of. I really liked all the armor, RPG upgrades, weapons, and monsters. But and it was fun to play with friends. I mean, if you could get a group of people and understand the convoluted systems that make up the multiplayer in that game, it was a good time. But I just think with everything else on this list, I don't think that it holds up there with that.
Cool. Disagree with everything you said there. Kyle or Derek?
I'm right here with Tim on this one. I'm wowed by some of those things that were just said right now. I think the environments are incredible in that game.
Yeah.
I think the way that you get around can be confusing. But
I feel like I kind of learned the areas after a couple runs,
You
and then
do.
next thing you know, I was flying through most
Well,
of them.
especially if it's like, oh, I know where that nest is, where that egg's gonna
Right.
be, and I knew exactly the shortcut to get there. And it's just there's this familiarity that came about, like exploring those areas, and especially like the bot flies or the little flies that kind of like lead you to where you need to go and stuff like that. Things were pretty simplified from the original series to this one, even
Oh, it
though
was
the game,
so much more accessible.
even though I would still say the game is still pretty inaccessible.
Yeah, it's
to a lot
still
of
tough.
newcomer. It's the most accessible it's ever been, but
Yeah.
it's very inaccessible to a lot of people still. I know plenty of people in Fathers of the Grind who are just like, can someone please help? Like everything's just so confusing right now when they're first starting out. And I've been playing Monster Hunter for a long time since it's come out. So like all these things are familiar to me at the very least.
Mhm.
But the improvements that this series have made from the original series are just so
And,
vast.
and I can see that this was the first one that I was actually able to get
Yeah.
into at all. I've tried to get in other ones, and the barrier of entry is so high that I've never been able to quite
Absolutely.
get into the game. But I mean, after playing 20 hours of this game, I just, with all the praise that people give it of the series, I am just not a fan of this game and how it plays and
It's
a lot of the
particular
systems
flavor
with
for
it.
sure.
And I just don't think that it's for me, it wasn't as much fun. I would much rather have Yakuza and Tomb Raider and Forza.
I
On the
wonder if
list.
I personally might have benefited from there not being a ton of other games that came out from then until we got to late March. At least other
Sure.
games that I cared that much about. So like I think
Mhm.
Far Cry 5 was the next big heavy hitter for me personally after. I mean, I still had Shadow of the Colossus remake. That was great and I loved that, but that's not a super long game. So I played Monster Hunter World almost exclusively for about 2 months. I put a lot of time into it. Got all the way to the Elder Dragons and into the final boss, which was
Same here.
fantastic. And I mean, oh my
Mhm.
word, just so freaking epic. And I got really good at 2 weapons, and I tried some others earlier on that I was like, I don't think I like the way this plays. I just had to find the right weapon set, and for me, it ended up being that Mega Hammer. And then upgrading that, and then getting all the matching armor that has all the upgrades you could possibly want. Boy, oh boy, I was incredibly hooked by this game.
It's a grind too. I mean, don't get me wrong.
It
You put
is.
your time into this
Yep.
game.
You got to
but
kill the same monsters over and over again to get
you
those
do,
armors.
and it's even worse than the original series. Like the random drop rates are even worse. But like
Yep.
it's still a grind in this game. I put easily over 100 hours in this game. It was probably the online game I played the most this year. Tim, I can't believe we didn't play this game together. It
Yeah,
sounds
what the
like
heck?
we were both playing this game a lot, but never together apparently.
Yeah, I actually ended up playing a
Uh,
lot solo, and then with a bunch of randoms that were
I
usually
played a lot with randoms too.
folks with Japanese or
They were
Korean
really good.
or something,
You-
and they were really good. So that was great.
Yes.
I think I haven't spoke on it, but I think Monster Hunter World has to be a lock for our top 10. I didn't beat the game, but I know I put 40 plus hours into it, and I, for the most part, enjoyed my 40 hours. Towards the end, I kind of got over it because, as Dan and even Kyle was saying, the grind got a little old. I got tired of fighting the same monster. I'm like, okay, I've experienced this, and I'm getting the same results, meaning like it wasn't like one time I'd win, one time I'd lose. Like I knew going into, okay, I'm going to beat him. We know how to beat him. It's not that difficult. But I was only fighting him to get loot that was not happening. And so it became repetitive and got annoying. But I still think it's definitely one of the top 10 games of this year.
So we've had an attempt to get rid of Ashen that was, at least for the moment, defended. Same with Monster Hunter World. That doesn't mean that they're definitely in. I'm just going to say they've already been suggested to remove with a couple defenses. They're not locks, but there's some pretty good defense for both of those. How about we do the same thing with Forza Horizon 4 as an overall best game of the year? Not just visuals or anything else, but like overall, does that belong in the top 10?
It's high up for me, but again, that's one of them. I mean, it means more to me than Soul Calibur 6, but I kind of see it as like a Soul Calibur 6 where there's so many unique experiences. There's not much difference between Forza Horizon 4 and 3 and 2 and the original.
I was going to bring that up, actually, because I played 3 and liked it.
It's the same experience. I just like 4 better because I like the world they built. they do make some minor improvements, and I love it for that. It is my favorite. There is no doubt this is my favorite racer of all time. It actually passed Burnout Paradise, which had been my favorite racer for the longest of times. But at the same time, if others want it in the top 10, I'll fight for it because I think it's a great game, but it's not one that I'm like, it has to be in there. It's not a unique experience to me. If you've played Horizon before, then you're not going to be blown away by major differences in this one. It's the same thing.
Yeah, the argument that I would make against it is go buy yourself Forza Horizon 3, get that Hot Wheels DLC, and you'll have all the car racing, beautiful goodness you need. I don't think you need Forza Horizon 4 unless you are a hardcore fan of the series or of cars themselves already. That's just my personal take on it.
And no, I agree with you. I mean, as much as I liked it and I'd place it higher on my list, I'd be more willing to let this game go before some other ones. Just because, like you said, you could get 3. It's not doing anything new in the series, really revolutionary. The online that they did in this game versus 3 and some of the other ones is a little different and kind of cool, but still, it's an open world racing game like they've done every other year for the last 4 years. So
they've been doing it well. They're just still doing the same thing. It's not a knock to it at all. I think they keep on refining that experience quite a bit. I think Seasons is kind of a big game changer, but not like to the genre. We've had Seasons before. We've had weather effects and stuff like that. I just like how like every couple of weeks, like it does naturally change and just and the environment like looks a little different. And it kind of keeps it fresh and everything. But I don't know if it's if that keeps it in the 10.
Okay. We somewhat reluctantly moved Forza Horizon 4 off the list. I need to go ahead and see if Dan and myself, I'm pretty sure Kyle and Derek don't love this as much as us. Do we have enough in the tank, Dan, to keep Dead Cells on this top 10 list?
I really want to keep it on this
So
list.
do I. I just want to hear what you have to say because then I'm going to say everything Dan said.
Okay,
How high is it on y'all's personal?
For
pretty high.
Dead Cells for mine is pretty high. I mean,
It's in my top 5.
For me, it's not quite top 5, but I'm also including games like Dark Souls Remastered on mine. So I would probably place it at number 6 on my list if you don't want to count Dark Souls. But I really enjoyed it. I think the combat is, it's just superior to any other side-scrolling 2D action game I've ever played. I've never experienced anything quite like that when everything flows. It's like scissors on wrapping paper. I mean, that game is just incredible.
That's a great analogy, man, because when you get the scissors right in that groove and you get to slice that wrapping paper
and you just start destroying all these enemies and you're not taking any damage on all the combos, the special weapons. I love they don't punish you for using your your traps and turrets and stuff like that. The cooldowns on those are
I'm about to go play this game right now. I love this game.
Reasonable. The world's level design, I do not like roguelike games, generally speaking. I hate that start over from the beginning every time. It's just totally not my kind of game. I love Dead Cells. I could not go on more about it. For me, I think it needs to be on the top 10, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to go up against some of these other. I mean, for me, it's leagues above anything like Monster Hunter or even Ashen.
I don't agree with that point right there, but I will say that it is in my top 5. Actually, wait. Maybe I did rank this above Monster Hunter. It's a tough one for me because they're so different from each other. I can't remember at any point where I ranked things. But anyway, they're both right in that middle section of my top 10 list. Dead Cells, I'm right there with you, Dan. I am not a fan of roguelikes usually. Stuff like Spelunky and Rogue Legacy I think are fun, but I dropped off of those relatively quickly. I just I was not interested in starting over every time. Rogue Legacy I stuck with a little longer because that was a lot of fun. But something about Dead Cells got its hooks in me and did not let go. And I ended up playing, and I feel like part of it's because every run's different. Part of it's because every weapon loadout you get, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, although you do get a chance to make some choices later on as you can purchase stuff from vendors throughout each run that you make. Man, I just thought it was so fun. So for me, Dead Cells is got to be on there. I would have trouble. And so, Dan, the reason I wanted to ask you that one is because the next one I was going to raise a question about is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which you and Derek already said is barely in your list, but in there. It's not on mine.
I would put Dead Cells above Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I would much rather give Shadow of the Tomb Raider up and keep Dead Cells on this list.
Derek or Kyle, what would you
I
think about
actually
that?
agree with keeping Dead Cells on there. I actually agree with a lot of things that everyone says about Dead Cells. I put about 5 hours in that game. I don't feel like I'm making any progress, which is my problem.
Yeah.
The lack of progress making in that game really makes me mad, and I'm not bad at it. I feel like I've had a couple good runs or whatever, but like
Because there should be some progression in that game. You should be feeling some sense of accomplishment progression once you start getting runes, unlocking more blueprints, starting weapons. There is a sense where you put 10, 15 hours in it. That run at 16 hours is going to be a much more successful, enjoyable run than your first 10 in the game. So
I feel like if we were having this conversation with me 5 more hours into the game or 2 more great runs that I've had, might be having a way different conversation right now, because the fluidity of the combat in that, it's one of my favorite feeling Metroidvania games this year, with those roguelike type of elements. And I do like roguelikes, so I mean, it's I think that game has a lot of positive stuff going on for it, and I agree with a lot of the things that you're saying, and I would definitely keep it over Shadow.
Why this game is not in my top 10. I think it's fun to play. I appreciate everything about it. I'm not hating on it just because it's an indie or looks like an indie trash game, but it plays amazing. It really does. I love the music. I have great memories of it. I would actually say it was probably the first game I started playing that I was like, okay, Derek might be coming back to gaming. Like this is what I need. It's not story driven. There's not a lot of talking. My issue was it's the same thing every time. And I'm like, can I please move forward? Can you give me something? It's the same issue I had with Below. Like, why am I going to invest a ton of time in this game if it's never going to reward me to make me feel like I'm moving forward or I have a chance? Like, again, I get it. There's other people that beat Dead Cells. Great on them. I'm talking my experience. That is not a game that encourages me to keep playing it, because it's like, well, if you unlock this, then it'll make the next run easier. No, you're not doing that. I unlocked your diagram or whatever blueprint, and it for what? So it can hang in a ball above my head in the beginning.
Maybe randomly drop in, hopefully.
It's just, that's what I don't like about it. Like, I thought when I first started playing, I'm like, oh, I unlocked this blueprint. I was thinking in my head, maybe I'll collect materials or enough money, and then I can unlock the blueprint as let's say it's a sword that I can use now every time I play at the beginning of the game. Nope. I still start with the same weapons. And I'm like, that's dumb. Like, that makes me mad, and that's why it dropped out of my top 10. Because when I originally started playing, I was like, this game's going to be in my top 10. This is fun. I like everything about it. But over time, I was like, no, it left like a nasty taste.
And I will say, after you unlock that second area, like that, after you get your first like shortcut move or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I can go to the sewers. It's cool. And now you have 2 different choices at the beginning. I see the spider web happening. Like, where I'm at in that game right now, I see the beginnings of the roads converging and splitting up and everything like that. So like, I feel like maybe a little more time with that game might give me a more positive spin on it. But
I don't anticipate with this group it's going to end very high in the top 10, but it sounds like, since Derek and Kyle don't hate it, they had some positives with it, even though they have some criticisms, and Dan and I both absolutely love it. Sounds like it's in.
I think it should be in. I don't want it high.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm okay with that.
I'm going to go ahead and just by default move Dragon Quest XI up. My only couple hours with it already shows me it's probably the best JRPG of the year, and it's beautiful. And
it's for me, it's my Xenoblade. Meaning, I'm not saying they're the same game. It's that it scratches that itch for this year.
And
this is the game that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, this is the game that really just gives me that nostalgic feeling. I want it in the top 10. It doesn't have to be high, but I want it in there.
And I enjoy its mechanic, like diet mechanic, almost like sensibilities. Like, it's not like Xenoblade, where it's just like, what the heck is going on with all this stuff, like, and all these menus and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's very traditional. It's very simple. It's very to the point. Even Persona 5 last year, it's very mechanic heavy. There's a lot of stuff going on. I love that game so much, but there's something so easy about Dragon Quest XI. Not in difficult, I guess in difficulty wise as well, but like in terms of just like being able to sit down and pick that game back up and play it and stuff. Very, very simple game.
Well, as our buddies Daniel Freitas and Moose Clue will put it, it's like comfort food, basically.
Absolutely.
It's that type of thing. And I think
Absolutely.
even just my short time with it, I can see that this is a really high quality game. So I love it. I think it deserves to be in the top 10, even if it's on the bottom half of that top 10. Because I don't think any of us are necessarily gung-ho Dragon Quest was the best game of the year. But I think there's at least 3 of us. I don't know what you, Dan, would talk about.
I didn't get a chance to play Dragon Quest 11. It totally looks great, like something that would be in my top 10. I can't fault it for it, but I can't really have a voice in this discussion.
So, guys, we've got one spot left between Detroit, Yakuza, and Shadow.
I think Detroit has to be a lock. Again, I expect that I'm going to enjoy Yakuza 6. I really do think I am. But I think
it seems
Detroit
disingenuous to put it on there with 3 people who haven't played it yet. So
Yeah.
I think it's gotten its love. You bought it on the podcast, so that's a win for me.
So then it comes down to Detroit versus Shadow, which, again,
I'm still going to pick Detroit, even though I had more fun playing Shadow, like actually playing it.
Yep.
But I think Detroit is the better game.
I think so too.
I haven't had a chance to play Detroit yet. I did just pick it up on PlayStation's holiday sale. So I hope to play it here soon. Typically, I don't like the Quantum Dream games as much.
I think you'll like this one.
They're
one's
fine.
way different, man.
Okay.
This one's
So
interesting.
I'm keeping an open mind with it, but I can't really weigh in too much on Detroit. Everything looks really cool about it. I love the choices, the adventure type storytelling. For me, I'd personally put Shadow on there over Detroit, but I don't think I'm going to get much support that way. So I'm not going to fight Shadow over Detroit. But
I'm a Detroit vote. Kyle, it kind of comes down to you whether or not we have to keep debating this one.
No, Detroit all the way for me.
Okay.
Question, Dan, how much did you pay for Detroit? How much is it?
Oh, I paid like $30 for it, or maybe less. I paid $20 for it. It was an Amazon digital code. Amazon had a digital code for $20. So yeah, I grabbed that.
Yeah, that's a good price for it. Yeah.
Yep. For that, I couldn't say no to it. So I'll get to it maybe once I'm done with Kingdom Hearts.
All right, that's a good deal.
Good deal. All right. So the 10 that we have currently: Assassin's Creed, God of War, Red Dead, Far Cry, Spider-Man, Ashen, Monster Hunter, Dead Cells, Dragon Quest, and Detroit. So right now, I've kind of got them. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say one thing, just how these randomly popped up there. You switch Far Cry and Spider-Man for me, and you have my top 5.
Oh, really? So you have Assassin's Creed, God of War, Red Dead, Spider-Man, Far Cry as your top 5? Yep. Nice. Okay.
And I would be ultimately really happy, and it's just kind of how that. But yeah, if you swap Spider-Man and Far Cry, I'd be real happy with that top 5.
Those top 4 of those games are in my top 5 or top 4. So
the 4 of these top 5 are.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one is not?
Far Cry, not Far Cry.
I know.
Oh, that's right. Okay. You did say that earlier. Okay, so these kind of just naturally split up this way based on how quickly there seems to be a consensus, even if there was 1 or 2 dissents. There was some kind of consensus, so I kind of just populated it up there that quickly. So let's start with the bottom half before we get up to the top half. Right now we've got Ashen at 6, Monster Hunter World at 7, Dead Cells at 8. This is just happened to be the order they fell in. Dragon Quest at 9, and Detroit at 11. I would personally leave Dragon Quest at the very bottom, not as a knock on it, but I haven't played enough of it to really fight for it any higher than that.
Agreed.
I'm okay with Ashen and Monster Hunter where they are, actually. I think Ashen, I'm with Derek. I think the pleasant surprise factor of that game has given it a boost in my mind as well. I was not expecting that. But I'm also okay with Ashen sliding down a few spots as well if we feel like something needs to be higher. I personally have Detroit in the top half of my top 10. So I would move it up higher, but I'm not necessarily advocating that we have to do that.
If nobody else is like super high on Ashen, then I would be fine with swapping Monster Hunter and Ashen.
I wanted to swap Dead Cells and Ashen.
I would swap Dead Cells and Ashen myself.
Oh, fuck. Both
So I would think if you wanted to go Monster Hunter at Dead Cells, then Ashen.
This guy's speaking my language right here.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking I'm being nice because I'm going to just swap it 1. Y'all just dropped it to 9. That's a top 5 game for me.
I'm sorry, Derek. I really liked it. I'm a big
I
Dark Souls guy. I like the game. Don't get me wrong, but looking at everything else on this list, I mean, I'd have to put Dead Cells over Ashen.
I have serious time I'm putting aside to play Ashen all day tomorrow because that's the game on this list that I've played the least of, even though I have spent some time with it. So, like, again,
It's very good.
we may be having a different conversation if this were 24 hours later. So,
Derek, you have Ashen above both Detroit and Monster Hunter World personally?
Yeah, it's number 5 on my list.
Okay. And you have Detroit and Monster Hunter World in the bottom half of your list?
Yes.
Okay. I wouldn't necessarily need it to be above Dead Cells. I personally have Dead Cells in my top 5. I love it. But I'm also trying to I'm trying to think of this from the objective point of view, hearing what both Derek and Kyle had to say about it. And then I was thinking back on what Derek and I had to say about Ashen. If I'm being an objective viewer here, I feel like it sounded like Ashen had more support than Dead Cells did, because Dead Cells had some knocks on it.
Yeah, that's probably
That's fair.
true. I mean,
That's fair.
I'm still on board with Ashen, even though I like Dead Cells more. So I would think he probably has a little more.
I like
support.
Dead Cells more too, but we made I think there was a stronger case with really nothing negative said much about it for Ashen. And with
I'll
Dead
tell
Cells,
you why Tim
Okay.
is willing to switch this, because he doesn't want to get a text message from me tomorrow crying. He doesn't want to hear my tears.
Derek, nobody wants.
How many
to
more
hear
do we have
that.
to move it up before the crying stops?
but now I'm pretty happy with that order: Detroit, Monster Hunter, Ashen, Dead Cells, and Dragon Quest in the bottom half.
I'm actually
Now,
good with that too.
This is the
Yeah.
assumption I'm making, that something like a Spider-Man and Far Cry 5 doesn't belong lower than any of those other ones.
I don't
For
think
me,
they do.
no. I absolutely love every game that's in the top 5. I love, except Red Dead Redemption 2. But I'm not going to take Red Dead out just because I've already said I'm fully convinced that once I commit to how the game is and just really invest in it, I will be like, oh, I wish I would have played it because it'd be my game of the year or it'd be my second favorite.
You
Let's
probably
talk
will,
about
but you do have to
Spider-Man
commit.
versus Far Cry 5. I know that Kyle's not a huge fan of Far Cry 5. Dan and Derek, tell me what you think. Spider-Man
I
versus
think
Far Cry.
Far Cry 5 has to be 5 for me.
I think so too.
Yep, I loved Far Cry 5. It was just incredible experience. But Spider-Man, with the nostalgia, the character, yeah, I agree. Spider-Man has to be number 4.
Spider-Man higher than it too.
I have, just so y'all know, Far Cry 5 as my number 4.
I got
Okay,
Far Cry
so-
5 as my number 5, so I'm good.
Me too.
Between those two, for Far Cry 5 and Spider-Man, like, Spider-Man's story is so good from start to finish.
Yep.
Whereas, like, Far Cry 5, I remember the end. Like, I don't remember
And
a lot
honestly,
of what happened
there's
in
not
that
a lot.
game.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on in Far Cry 5 story. It's pretty
Yeah.
simple as far as what's happening, and Ada Y is pretty much in a nutshell. Z was real memorable, but like you said,
Mhm.
Spider-Man had a great story start to finish.
Absolutely.
Well, I will say this. I think these are really tough for me. These two are really close. I actually think if I had to pick which one to jump back into, now that I've completed a lot of the side quests and both main storylines, I'd probably go back and play Far Cry 5 again. So I think
That's
I
how
would
am.
I would personally give the edge to Far Cry 5, but I'm not opposed to being in the.
I would go back and play. I have the Spider-Man DLC. I
I've
would.
got that waiting for me too.
Yep, I would do the Spider-Man deal. I don't have the Far Cry 5 DLC, but I would do the Spider-Man DLC before I did anything more in
Okay.
Far Cry 5.
Strangely, I was very excited to end Far Cry 5. I just, like, for me, it just lost a lot of steam. I just felt like I've seen all the chaos and made all the chaos that I could have in
Yep.
this world. And
Cool
I
question.
just wanted to see those credits roll. Whereas, like, Marvel, I never wanted that game to end. I never wanted Spider-Man to end. Just keep on going forever and ever and ever. But Far Cry, I was like, is this, like, I got other things I need to do. Like, it's not even that long of a game. I felt like the gameplay loop started to suffer in that, like, those last final hours of that game. Whereas I did not feel that way for Spider-Man at all.
Well, did any of you guys play, and I'm not, this doesn't knock your opinion, I'm fine with it, but did any of you guys play Far Cry 5 co-op?
I
No.
did, yeah. I played most of the game co-op, actually. About, I would say just under half. So
Okay, all right. For me, that was why it made it so memorable. I don't know. I love playing with another person, plus having the AI with me. So you had 3 of us knocking crap out. Plus, I would pick on the AI companion all the time. Like I would just punch it or I would leave it behind, all this stuff. But I just think Far Cry 5 is the more I enjoyed my time with it more than Spider-Man, but I still objectively think Spider-Man's the better game. Like I do think Dan actually nailed it. Like I love Far Cry 5's ending, and I have no problem with the story either. But the story is literally just the bad people, whoever section you're in, just saying, "Hey, we're gonna come for you. We're religious nuts," and that's it. Whereas Spider-Man had a lot more character to it. We've talked about this before in previous shows. No, I don't like all the tacked on villains at the end, but the two main villains, the way they build them up and the way they develop them, I think it's just a better game.
And that final boss fight.
Boss fight was probably one of the best final bosses I had in any game this year.
So epic, really cool.
So good.
It was really cool.
Yeah. All right. So I'm okay with Spider-Man being above Far Cry 5. I'm also okay with these remaining 3 being above the other 7.
Yep.
So right now we've got Dragon Quest at 10, then Dead Cells at 9, Ashen at 8, Monster Hunter World at 7, Detroit Become Human at 6, Far Cry 5 appropriately at 5, Spider-Man at 4, and now we've got these 3: Assassin's Creed Odyssey, God of War, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, at any given time while I was playing each of these games, I remember thinking, this is the best game this year. Nothing else will beat it. Like, it just depended on which one I was playing. I was actively involved with.
I beat God of War and I go, good luck rest of the year.
So did I.
Yep,
like,
exactly.
Good luck. Like, just no one else is going to come close to this.
Absolutely.
And then things did. So.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So what I needed to do, because there's so much separation, I think Assassin's Creed and Red Dead I played more recently, of course, because they came out in October. Mm-hmm. And so they're very fresh in my mind. I can kind of compare which one I liked more and why. So those are a little bit easier for me. I've got Assassin's Creed Odyssey over Red Dead 2. The question for me, and it's barely, by the way, but I do have it higher than it. The question for me is, where does God of War fit in that equation? So I took Derek's advice and I fired up New Game Plus just to re-experience a bit of the game and get a feel for it again and look at it again. God of War is my favorite game of the year. It's number 1. I think it's the best game of 2018. So I personally would put this at God of War at the top, Assassin's Creed Odyssey at number 2, and Red Dead Redemption 2 at number 3. Now, if we were to go off of purely objective things in terms of, like, I don't know, the technical specs or which one has the best visuals and all those kind of pieces, Red Dead Redemption 2 might win if we did some sort of point system. But for me, just very subjectively from my point of view, that's the way it lands. God of War, AC Odyssey, Red Dead 2.
That's actually how my list is. Well, minus Red Dead, so I would put Red Dead at 3. I have God of War. I slid it from like the 7 or 8 spot to number 1. I actually think in my mind Assassin's Creed Odyssey and God of War are tied for first, but right now I'm leaning God of War a little bit
tough
more
one for me too, yeah.
Than Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So then Assassin's Creed Odyssey is my number 2 technically. Although, like I said, I could jump back into it and be like, no, it's number 1. And then I'm fine with Red Dead Redemption at 3.
But before we solidify too much, I know Dan's got some thoughts on this too. I want to hear.
It's our show, Tim, so I really don't care what those two do.
That's true. I should just
you and I
should just hang up on them.
Let's
just kick us out of the chat. We're done.
Let's just kick them out of the chat. You and me just finalize this bad boy right here now. But I do want to hear Kyle make a case for Red Dead 2 because you never know if I could be swayed or not. That game had an impact on me in a lot of different ways. I love Red Dead 2. So, Kyle, make your case for Red Dead being higher than number 3.
Just don't think there's ever been a story that it was told like this one ever in a video game. I think it's a perfect narrative. I think the payoffs at the end are just outstanding. And I'm not talking just the narrative right now. I think the story of Arthur is absolutely fantastic. I don't know if maybe some of the choices that you make maybe changes that story for people where they feel differently. But the choices that I made and the way that my Arthur ended was absolutely brilliant. I probably cried 3 or 4 times in that game. I'm a big baby though, so that probably doesn't mean anything. There's just there's a finality to like that arc that feels so good. And much like we were just talking about the Rogue One to Episode 4 comparison, Red Dead Redemption 2 makes Red Dead Redemption 1 a better game and a better narrative. It adds so much.
I agree with that.
The greater world, and
Yeah.
it does so much. And like I've just never played a game that like where the world like it was a real world. Like regardless of what direction you walked into, something was happening there.
Yeah.
A cougar was attacking a rabbit. You were being attacked by strangers. I walked up on some guy who was hung and cut him down and was attacked by crazy people with knives, you know?
Yeah.
And it just completely, all these random, sometimes they're procedural and sometimes they're meant to happen right there and right then, but like it just feels so organic.
And if you camp in the wrong place, they'll interrupt you with a cutscene.
Yeah, absolutely. This is our area.
And then, like, if you camp here again, you're going to get it. And I'm like, wow, that was kind of cool. They did that because then they leave. And then if you camp there again, they will attack you. So it's
I don't know. I've never been in a world that felt this alive, you know? And like, yeah, you have to play the games at your own terms. And maybe it's not the funnest game in the world for everybody, but like, I don't know if you can argue that it is the most impressive open world game ever to come out in terms of just immersion and just what you're doing and how you exist in that world, how your character exists and interacts in that world.
Anyone who's ever wanted to be a cowboy, this is the game.
Yeehaw Simulator 2018, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's something special, you know, and it demands a lot out of you, and the game asks a lot out of you, and you are playing on its terms. But like, I think that and I hate saying this, but if you just surrender to the experience the way that the game wants you to play, you're gonna be in for something more special than anything you've ever played. You know, like it's just I don't know if I ever set a single goal and finished it. You know, just like I'm gonna go over there. On my way there, 1,000 different things happen, and I get distracted so much, and then all of a sudden I find myself like hunting gators, and I'm like, I was supposed to be up north in the mountains. Like, what the hell am I doing down here? You know.
But well, to be fair though, there were also periods of time where I set that game to auto ride, and then would put the controller down and go do something, like get a sandwich.
And you can do that, but think of all the things while you were making a sandwich or checking on the kids or whatever that you missed. You know what I mean? All the screaming people on the side of the road, or all the
there were a few of those.
The little animals that are like all the little things that you miss, the little details. You know, it's just it's hard. And I get a lot of the complaints that people are just like, I just want to do things. I want to be able to fast travel. The game doesn't want you to do that. It wants you to experience the world. It wants you to do that. And that's not everybody's cup of tea. But I kind of applaud Rockstar's bravery for being like, this is the way the game is, and just you guys can get with it or get over it.
You know, what's interesting is I didn't think this was that big of a world after playing Odyssey and Witcher 3 and stuff.
Nope.
It wasn't until I realized that down south, west of Blackwater, pretty much the entire map from the first game is available to you.
And it's actually expanded out bigger to kind of scale better to the world.
It's crazy. It's crazy big.
Insane. It's insane how big it is.
So you're saying I should play it?
I mean, be in the mood to play it, because the more that you force this feeling, the more that you force like this against the grain like feeling that the game can have an effect on people, the more you're gonna hate it. You know, so like you got to find that moment where you're just like, I'm ready to like surrender this experience.
Listen, Kyle, all the feedback I've gotten from women is that I'm not patient. I don't know if you would believe that about me, but I would
never think anything like that.
Yes.
I mean,
every single woman has said that to me. So
this game requires patience out of you. It doesn't even ask it out of you. It requires
a damn woman.
You know,
it requires emotions and patience.
Yes,
oh, God.
All of those things. You know, and you know, everyone. Oh, I can't run when I'm in camp. Yeah, things important are happening in camp. You don't run by them. You know, like the game again, like it's designed in a way where it doesn't want you to miss these things, even though you're gonna miss so many things.
It rewards you with very unique experiences when you are sauntering through camp and you see that so and so wants to talk to you, and you sit down and talk to them. Believe it or not, I know this is going to sound corny, so bear with me, but you'll learn more about Arthur and these other characters, which makes you care about them more when big story moments happen. So I totally see that. And again, I could see why folks would say that's way too slow. Well, if this is the only thing, like for example, my brother played this game and it was the only game he was paying attention to, or like our buddy Nate Bacon, as he's playing this for the last couple of months, it's the only thing he's playing. Yeah. Of course, they're going to enjoy it. They're going to enjoy the crap out of it because they don't have anything else distracting them. They don't feel the pressure of getting a couple more games under their belt before these game of the year discussions. So in a way, I'm kind of jealous of that, where they can just dive into that and not
Yeah.
worry about anything else.
The game almost kind of
This-
need to do that. You
This
know?
is that kind of game. I would argue that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is that kind of game too. Just depends on your personal preference.
And I would say that even when I beat a Red Dead Redemption, the next game I went to was Odyssey to wrap up those last like 10 to 15 hours that I had. And the very first thing I said about that game was like, boy, this game is just so not easy, but just like everything. Right when I jumped in, I was like, everything makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like when I'm playing Red Dead, I'm like, I got to think about, I can't just
Right.
press any button because like I can just start shooting people in town, you know, like you have to really think about like when you're hitting X, because if hitting X, you can either get on your horse or you can slug a guy in town, you know? So it's like the game's pace is way different. Whereas Assassin's Creed is just like, let's just get to the fun, guys. Let's just get to the good stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what's nice about Assassin's Creed, but they're also two completely different open world games, even though they're the same genre. They're just so different in those experiences you get out of that.
They are.
You
You
know,
could make an argument that they might be the best efforts that Rockstar and Ubisoft respectively have put up.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not a huge Assassin's Creed like fan, like series wise. Origins in this game, these are like games that have turned my opinion around completely on that series. I thought that series was kind of a joke. I thought the narratives were just like insane, and all the present day stuff is just stupid. But these last two Assassin's Creed games have been cream of the crop open world games. They always get like likened to like The Witcher 3 and stuff like that. And I agree. And Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. So it's like when people start saying like it's like The Witcher 3, at first I'm like, well, chill out, everybody. That's a little crazy. But it actually deserves that moniker. I mean, that's a very solid open world game. Assassin's Creed in my top 4 as well. I mean, it's just
Dan, let's hear your thoughts on these top 3.
Okay, I'm a little of the same ilk as Kyle here with Red Dead Redemption 2, but in the same breath that some of what it did, it wasn't always as enjoyable. I'm not saying it didn't have its moments, it didn't create its world. I mean, it did everything at the top of its game, and it did it really well. But and I enjoyed it. I put almost 70 hours into that game. I mean, I did every stranger mission, every side character mission, and I felt like I really, at least did some of everything that game had to offer. I thought it was good. I didn't think always the story was the strongest, but once it got going into chapter 6, I think everything picked up steam, and it finished really well. Had some really good moments to it. But I thought God of War was more of a better ride from start to finish for what it was trying to accomplish. It was a bit more of an action game. It wasn't an open world. But I really enjoyed Red Dead Redemption, but at the end of the day, I just had a lot more fun with God of War. Enjoyed everything they did with that series compared to what it had been, the re-envisioning of it.
So you have that as number 1 for you, Dan?
No, I'd still keep it at number 2. And above all of them, I would hold Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And it's because The Witcher 3 is probably my favorite game of all time. The world they create, the speed that you can do things, the feedback loop, the combat, the visuals, everything in that game, it's just it's comfort food to me. I loved Assassin's Creed prior to Origins. I was a big fan of the series, but I didn't think it was probably the greatest game of all time. They were fun, action stealth games, but Origins really did it for me. I did all the achievements in that 80 plus hours last year, and Odyssey was just exactly what I wanted. More of that in a little bit better ways. I thought they changed up some things as far as the naval combat, but wow, what a big open world, just dense with things to do. And I don't know, it's just maybe if it was just more of an immediate feedback loop. I haven't gotten too far into the story of Odyssey yet, so I can't really speak to that, but just the enjoyment I get from playing that game, the aspects that it has in it, the mechanics it bakes in, is just really the kind of experience I want out of a video game.
So you have AC and then God of War and then Red Dead?
Yep.
And then Derek, you've got God of War, AC, then Red Dead, like I do?
Yeah.
And then Kyle, you've got Red Dead, and then what?
I've got Red Dead, God of War, and then AC.
So sounds like God of War has 2 first place votes and 2 second place votes. Assassin's Creed has 1 first place, 2 second place, and a third. And then Red Dead has 1 first place and 3 third place. So I'm doing the math on that correctly, I think. That leaves us with a really close race, actually, but it's God of War AC, Red Dead. I believe.
Yes.
I like that.
Now, I had to do it mathematically, so we're not here until 2 a.m.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing is, if you had, let's say that right now you're listening to this and you really haven't had money to spend on many games this year, and you listen to podcasts like ours just to kind of live vicariously through those of us who are incredible nerds. And that's totally fine. I understand that. I've been through phases of life like that too. But if you had to pick one to buy, and you picked definitely any of these top 5, even branching into some of the ones in the lower half of this top 10, you can't go wrong. If you just picked up God of War and that's the only thing you played, you're going to be thrilled. Great pick. I would say the same thing about AC, Red Dead, Spider-Man, Far Cry 5, and even some of the others. Like if you feel like a more in-depth challenge that's going to take a big learning curve, Monster Hunter World. If you want something really story-based that doesn't really take much in terms of gameplay or platforming or combat, then Detroit is the game for you. You know, if you're a little more old school and want a roguelike challenge, go Dead Cells. If you like, so there's always something. And this top 10 list is pretty incredible. And I'll review it with us here in a second. But you guys glance at this list real quick, and even if it's not exactly where you place everything, do you feel like it's a fair representation of what we've talked about?
I think of our discussions tonight, I think this is pretty well representing our consensus among these rankings. So I think we did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah.
It's hot garbage, but whatever.
Okay. I like how he even has to look away. Like he can't even stand looking at us. Like
You disgust me. This is pathetic. Guacamole 2 should be the game of the year.
Oh yeah.
But because you all hate Mexicans, of course it's off the top 10.
Yep, we hate Latin culture.
And Kyle.
Yeah.
Kyle, I know that you had to make some exceptions in here for stuff like Yakuza, and even of course for Red Dead being, instead of an easy number 1, it's down at number 3. Things like that. I totally get it. How do you feel overall about the list based on our discussion?
Red Dead hurts. Yakuza, I understand. Red Dead hurts, but I get it. Fun factor is always going to win for some people. And I'm not going to say even elements about Red Dead story isn't fun. It's emotional. It's emotionally raw. It's hard to take sometimes. It's like The Last of Us. Like when you're playing The Last of Us, it might be one of the greatest games ever made. Nothing about that game is really fun though.
Agreed.
Like choking people out and them nothing about that game is particularly fun. So maybe it kind of falls into that inkling. So I'm happy it's in the top 5.
It is an interesting tension between those two things: the real serious Last of Us type of storytelling and the open world, go do whatever you want experience. It's got a little
I
bit.
just want to say the way Kyle described Red Dead's experience, like your experience with the game, is the same thing Sasan said when we were getting intimate. It's just the raw.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
I was wondering where you were going with this. I thought you were about.
Oh man!
Surely he's not just agreeing with me on something.
Yeah.
So
Oh man!
All right, I think I gotta be somewhere.
Yeah, we all do. All right, so here's our final.
tough experience.
Here's our final
It's
top
very
10.
hard to swallow.
geez.
Oh.
All right. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
final top 10 from 2018 is at number 10, Dragon Quest XI, number 9, Dead Cells, number 8, Ashen, number 7, Monster Hunter World, number 6, Detroit Become Human, number 5 is Far Cry 5, number 4, Spider-Man, number 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, number 2, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and number 1, God of War. I gotta tell you, 2018 is pretty fantastic.
Pretty fantastic.
It's funny because I was looking at this list and really just besides the top 5, it's not impressive to me. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad year. I know you guys enjoyed it. I'm just saying I feel like compared to last year, like there were so many games that I wanted in the top 10 and almost half these games that are in the top 10, I'm like, I like them, but I'm not in love with them.
I would say that the top 5 are stronger than the top 5 last year, but the amount of games I wanted in my 10 were more last year than this year.
Yeah, I'd say
I
that's
feel
fair.
very of two minds. I think this is one of the best years in gaming ever, but only because like the really good ones were like genre defining, generation defining, even I would say.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would.
I have a ton of like 8 out of 10 games this year, probably more than 2017 had, but I don't have the 9.5 or 10 out of 10s compared to last year. I think last year I had, I don't know, like 4 or 5 of those. This year I think I had 2, maybe 3. Anyway, great. This was good though, guys. I appreciate you helping with the rankings, even if your heart hurts a little bit. Go have something to drink. You're going to be okay. Before we close out though, tell me what is the game that you're most looking forward to in 2019?
Who you want to start with?
I will start that since maybe you guys don't have one off the top of your head. Maybe you do, but I'll give that one a start. And I'm just saying this because it's coming out early in the year. There might be something else later in the year that ends up being more hyped for me. But for right now, I am really pumped for Far Cry New Dawn to come out in February. Cannot wait for that game. Loved 5, as you guys know. And I think New Dawn looks like it's going to be a blast. And it's only going to be $40, I think. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, 40.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't expect it to be all that Far Cry 5 was necessarily, but if I can get a Far Cry Primal type experience in a post-apocalyptic world, awesome. That's all I want. I'm very pumped for that. Dan, what about you? What are you excited for this coming year?
Big FromSoft fan, so I'm excited for Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
Yes.
I love Dark Souls, Bloodborne. This looks like it is going to be a bit of a different take on that. Everything I've seen though, that is shown, it looks pretty cool. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
Does it have a release
Can't wait.
date?
I think it is coming out in April. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But I can't wait.
It's
to see the loot
March
boxes
22nd.
Activate. Yeah, it's gonna have the best loot boxes. So go Activision.
Yay. All right. Kyle, what about you?
If it had a hard date, I would say Ghost of Tsushima, but since it doesn't, I'll just go Kingdom Hearts 3. It's coming out in like 3 weeks. I'm very excited. So
Yeah, it's going to be a good way to start the year for most folks.
absolutely.
For me, the game I'm excited to start the year with is actually not a new game, but I have not played new Super Mario Bros. Or new.
Oh, it's good.
Or new
Yeah,
games.
that's a fun one.
It's a good one.
So
Yeah,
that
you'll like it.
deluxe combo on the Switch, I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that's good.
That one. Derek, what
Heck
about
yeah.
you?
I'm gonna go ahead and name off a couple. I'm gonna say for the immediate one, the one that's coming like real soon, I'm gonna go with Resident Evil 2.
Yes.
And then the other two that I'm real excited for would probably be Anthem and Sekiro.
Okay. Anthem's a February game too, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I played the alpha, but I can't talk about it.
Oh, you said you signed a non-disclosure, huh?
Yeah.
Smile
I'll
or
lose-
frown. Let's see if we can figure it out.
No.
Oh no!
Oh, no.
Don't go off that. But I can't say anything, or I'll lose all my EA Origins games.
Blink
so.
twice if it was good.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah, 2019 is shaping up to be a pretty amazing year too, and I hope we talked about this earlier this week or this month, I suppose, if you're listening to this with Bobby. I'm hoping that Nintendo and Microsoft are ready to up their game in 2019. I don't think either of them had bad years by any stretch, but I want some of that console exclusive goodness. And I'm like, this is why I own this console. So I'm hoping they both come out swinging with some stuff. So,
PlayStation has been not just dominant in sales, but they've been consistent every year, giving us amazing experiences that you can only play on their platform.
Yep.
And they're doing it with big numbers, not like, oh, 1 or 2 games are great. We're talking huge numbers of games are only coming to their platform. I think Microsoft ended the year nicely with Ashen. I think we need to see more of that. And then Nintendo, hopefully, I mean, I can already tell you I'll probably like 2019 better than 2018 for Nintendo just because of Fire Emblem. But hopefully we'll get some new experiences as well.
I hope so too. Well, cool. Well, hey, listen, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kyle. And I guess thank you, Derek, for taking time to rank our games of 2018. That's going to do it for us for a couple weeks here. When you guys listen to this, we will be off until the second week of January. Got too many other things going on, but hopefully this has been enough of us chattering away with our dumb opinions.
I got to fly to Missouri. I wonder why I got to go there. Let you guys figure that out. Tim's
Hopefully
confused.
Hassan is taking refuge and trying to hide, but I'll leave that to
Son, hide immediately.
He does know karate, so good
First
luck.
of all, that mother fudger messaged me while we were doing this show saying, give me your phone number so we can play Battlefield 5 together. And then he starts doing all these mad emojis at me.
Yeah,
So
well,
now he's got my phone number. So now we're
Bat-
really gonna talk all the
You
time.
guys both need a
Battlefield
panic
5
room.
is a bad game. So
Metal Gear, yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much. Happy New Year.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?